morning and welcome to ELOsoFumarTakes. This is our 288th take, live from the Alec Bradley Lone Star studio of Azle, Texas. I'm your host, Barry Duplessis, as always, and I'm so proud, so pleased, and so privileged to be with you all tonight. This is going to be a fantastic show, a blast from my past, two distinguished gentlemen that mean so much to me personally. I'm so excited to share some more time with them. Both the returning guests of the show, but before we get introductions to the guests of honor, we do have to thank the people that make this show possible. And don't forget that tonight's audio broadcast is courtesy of Gran Habano Cigars. Honest, compassionate, great cigars. Be sure to download, subscribe, and review today. If you already are a subscriber, do me a favor, hit the word unsubscribe, but don't forget to hit resubscribe, as that really helps my numbers. And if you are one of those people that leave no reviews or leave a review with no feedback, how am I supposed to get better? That's my only ask, is that if you're going to give me 1 star, make sure you tell me why I suck. But don't forget to download, subscribe, and review today. Again, tonight's audio broadcast is courtesy of Gran Habano Cigars. Honest, compassionate, great cigars. Be sure to download, subscribe, and review today. And tonight's show is brought to you by Drew Estate. Drew Estate's resounding success of the Drew Estate partnership with Blackened Whiskey on Blackened Cigars M81 Maduro to the core in 2022 led to the newest release from Drew Estate as they announced the new Connecticut Shade wrapped brand new release shipping of a Blackened S84 Shade to Black. The cigars are a passion project between Rob Dietrich, the master distiller and blender of Blackened Whiskey at Sweet Amber Distilling, James Hetfield, that James Hetfield from Metallica's co-founder, singer, and guitarist, Jonathan Drew, of course, founder and president of Drew Estate. Hetfield and Dietrich worked closely with Drew, a friend of Dietrich's, for over a decade to create the perfect blend for this cigar. The Blackened S84 Shade to Black takes aficionados on a nuanced journey with its deliciously smooth and inviting blend. Wrapped in a luxurious Connecticut Ecuador cover leaf, the consumer experience of this expression is distinctly different from the original, while still retaining foundational qualities of M81 due to Connecticut River Valley Broadleaf Maduro binder and Nicaraguan Maduro and Pennsylvania Broadleaf Maduro filler leaves. So check out your Drew Diplomat retailer today and get yourselves a new Blackened S84 Shade to Black today. And welcome, everybody. So without further ado, here are my guests of honor. Our guests tonight are sponsored by United Cigar. Smoke one today and start living United. Mr. Tracy Spence and Paul Costo of Oliva Cigar Company and the nice Guys Cigar Agency. Gentlemen, how are we doing tonight?
Doing well.
Welcome. Hey, we didn't know if this was going to happen tonight. So thank you so much for being patient. Oh my goodness.
Not a problem.
You know, I would love to point the finger at Tracy and blame it on him, but actually it was me. So I apologize, gentlemen. Thank you so much for your patience and hanging through this technical difficulties as we got the show underway.
We're here and ready to go.
You're doing your sponsors, I'm doing mine.
Right on. Appreciate it, guys. Well, hey, listen, so let's go ahead and get things started. I mean, y'all have already been smoking, already been drinking as I've been hitting the panic button over here. So I've got some coffee and a beverage that I just poured as well, and I'm going to be lighting up a cigar here momentarily. But I wanted to see what you guys are smoking and drinking tonight. Tracy,
Paul, I'm going to let you start.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Paul, kick us off.
All right, so I'm finishing up a Milanio 2023 LE Figurino. Got about a third of that left, and then I'm going to dive into a Serie V Anniversario 135th anniversary.
It's such a great cigar.
And drinking a little bit of Buffalo Trace bourbon.
Buffalo Trace, huh? We were talking about
sir.
that. You can actually find it nowadays. It used, a couple years back, it was like,
yeah, it's a little bit. I guess the smaller bottles aren't on allocation anymore, but the bigger ones are still allocated.
Well, that's good. At least you can get. You just have to buy a case instead of a bottle or two. And just stack up.
I've got one.
Modern problems, modern solutions, right?
Definitely.
Yep.
Tracy, what about you?
Well, I'm starting to show off tonight with the Matilda Savannah Maduro, which is like the Serena, but with a little bit more depth and flavor. Everything a Maduro should be, but can genuinely be your breakfast Maduro. My next will be a Brulee because absolutely. And since I know it's a long show, and I'm gonna have myself a Psalm BDX after that, and then I'm gonna have the Gillis Family Reserve, which is absolutely gorgeous from work, and I'm gonna light them with my V-Soul accessories
You're just all
and
branded out,
cut
man.
them with
Good
that
stuff.
too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, good stuff. What do
Yeah,
you got?
I figured yeah, I mean, you got brands, so I technically have brands I gotta say too.
Yeah.
So
No,
that's what I
absolutely.
have. I actually have all the guys I love working with. I like that we're sponsored by some great people. Uh, you know, wonderful folks at George Rico, wonderful guy, Grant Havana,
Yeah.
Alec Bradley there, yeah, and then
Yeah.
United Cigars is very nice, and of course we got Paul.
We got Paul here.
Yeah,
We
but
got you
I was
here.
gonna only smoke. I was only going to smoke Olivas just as a tribute to Paul, but I thought about also like going way back and go through the journey of Paul through it. But
Ooh, that would have been good. We're gonna
that
talk
would
a little
make
bit
it
about
that would
that.
make a long show.
well, but then I grabbed whiskey and I got distracted and I was like, I have these right here.
I thought about
We're
that too,
probably going to have some
actually.
company here.
I honestly thought about that too, Tracy. Like going back through all the brands that Paul's represented over the years. It would. I mean, it would have been. It wouldn't be that long, but it would be distinguished, Paul. It's a list of distinguished brands. So.
Yeah, no, you didn't jump around. It was you went and you stayed and you built.
Yeah,
And
three good brands.
Yep.
All right. So, well, I'm not smoking anything yet, gentlemen. So I've got a cup of coffee and I've also got a bourbon, 1835, from our Lone Star state of Texas. I figured that would piss off the Oklahoma fan and be proud for the Texan here. So we got good stuff there. But I've got a bunch of cigars here, guys, and I think Paul, I wanted to give you the honor. It's been a while since you've been on the show, much longer than Tracy. But I wanted to welcome both of you back. So we have a tradition here on the show. I give you a couple of cigars for you to choose from. I think you'll like at least a couple of them. But I will smoke whatever you tell me to, Paul. So here we go. So here's the lineup that I have for us tonight. I have a Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust Sobremesa Brulee Robusto. So great minds think alike there, Tracy. I have a Matilde Serena Corona, one of my favorite cigars from Enrique. I've got an Oliva Connecticut Reserve Churchill. There you go, Paul. I have another Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust product here, the Sin Copper Miso Intrepido, the 5.63 by 46. And then, of course, I have the Oliva V Melanio Maduro, also in a Churchill. So, Paul, it is up to you, and you don't have to be a gentleman about this. If you want to pick your own brand, I won't stop you.
Would I be an asshole if I did?
No, not at all. Why not? The choice is yours. No pressure.
Okay, I'm gonna be a gentleman and say go with the Matilda because I think it's too light for the Connecticut or too late in the day for the Connecticut. So
okay.
So go for the Matilda and then do the Melanio after that.
You got it. That's what I will do.
Can I pick? Can I pick two?
Yeah, absolutely.
You can pick them all.
That's good.
Well, yeah.
Well, thank you, Paul. Appreciate it. Yeah, I love this cigar. I love all these cigars. That's why I picked them. It's the great thing about this show, and you have guys that represent great brands and stuff. You get to pick through whatever cigars you pretty much want in their portfolio, which is nice. So, but one thing I wanted to start with here. So, Tracy, I mean, a lot of people who don't know you you're pretty well known for your collection of things. You like to have there's a lot of things that you collect. Knives is probably the most popular one that everyone knows about, that you're probably infamous for. But I know you've done watches over time and everything like that. But I wanted to ask if there was anything new that maybe, in the last couple of years you picked up on that I haven't had the opportunity to talk to you about.
Just memories.
Just memories.
Just memories. That's all I collect anymore is memories.
That and cigars still.
Well, I mean, I have, yeah, I've got some, but I spend more time putting together little care packages for friends and shipping them out. Like, I got to make room. I got way too many humidors that I got to make room for the stuff when I'm on the road.
Did you ever think that would be a problem for you, that you would have too many cigars and you would have to do something with them?
Problem? No, no. I mean, I think it's great that over time, even some of the more scarce things, like for me right now, I live whenever I'm somewhere and somebody's talking about like a dream cigar or their white whale, and if I think through my memory bank of all the humidors, and let's face it, I mean, we've acquired a lot of humidors over the years because we were in retail, and I just need to build a big one, but I also kind of don't want to. So I use a lot of Pelican cases. I've got like a for work. I keep like a 5 foot by 3.5 by 3 foot deep Pelican case
Mm-hmm.
and Boveda, and I don't have to worry about it. But I mean, over the years, it got to the point where I filled up all the wood ones, and you know, I mean, you were probably there when I had that moment where I was like, I'm switching over to Boveda,
Yeah.
when they first came out, and I didn't, everybody was kind of questioning it. And then we had a couple of customers come in, and one of them, his wife's job was to, when he was out, like the only deal was he would leave her 5 cigars in this massive humidor. That's all she had to take care of. And, I think you were working with me that night. We were both very shocked that, after he got back from being out of town for 9 months, he still had cigars.
Yeah. No
And I
joke.
was like,
Right.
all right, that's it. I'm sold. Yeah. And that was a long time ago,
I remember when they first
no,
came
I
on the
mean,
market, because we started talking about crystals. Like that was where we started with it, and then
or the floors foam. Like we were still
Mhm.
in the floors, the old ancient days. And then people were like, let's use cat litter, which that one terrified me. I don't
Yeah,
remember the little clay pellets. There's been so much weird stuff. But then, of course,
for sure.
the florist gel beads, you know, but the
Yeah, those
convenience of those packs,
can't beat it. Now they're in almost every box of
no,
cigars you buy. Right, Paul, does Oliva ship
that's
with
brilliant.
Boveda? They do, don't they?
Uh, we ship the Milanios with Boveda
Yeah,
because they're uncellared. So
right. So Paul, what is there anything that you collect? Is there anything that you like over the year besides cigars? And I know you have a pretty, you have a pretty big humidor that where you've kept some of the treasured stuff over the years and everything. But like, is there anything you collect besides cigars?
not anymore. I used to collect, like CDs and stuff. I'm huge into music, and I had an extensive, or I still do have an extensive CD collection. But since everything went digital, I pretty much stopped buying CDs except for, you know, something I really have to have that I want a physical copy of. Um, but I'm trying to downsize more at this point in my life, so I'm not into
Not into
buying stuff
collecting.
anymore. No,
Is it liberating, or is it scary getting rid of things, or not as getting as much stuff?
it's liberating now. You know, I can actually walk in my garage.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, let's there was a lot of couple of hints of there, some blasts from the past there a little bit. So we're gonna walk through just a couple of things over the next uh few minutes, maybe a little bit over an hour and everything, and talk a little shop, but talk a little memory lane as well. So let's go ahead and get launching into tonight's major point, which is always brought to you by Grand Habano Cigars. From the fertile lands of Honduras, George Rico and his family put together the very best vintages for you. Yes, that's you, the cigar smoker. From value-based hits like the Corojo Number 5 to the award-winning 20th anniversary to special projects like Zulu Zulu, Grand Habano is about cultivating the best and making pinnacle cigars for the market. Culture, tradition, quality, premium, handcrafted. That is Grand Habano Cigars. So tonight, gentlemen, I wanted to kind of get a little bit about. We're kind of talking a little bit about when we were talking about which cigar I was going to be smoking, kind of going down memory lane a little bit. But Paul, it's been a long time since you've been on the show. Just kind of what you, I mean, you started. You came out of school, you went to the U.S. Air Force, and then when you got out of that, you went. I think it was Capital One, right? That's who your first, I guess, real quote
Yeah,
unquote
that's
job
correct.
was?
I was there for 5 years at Capital One.
What'd you do there?
Worked systems. I ran their dialers. Call center supported them. Did the call center staffing, helped out with that. So
That's some real
was the most
sounding
fun.
stuff.
Was the most fun.
Why'd you leave something so fun and exciting to come to the cigar industry? I mean, that just sounds weird.
Well, that's exactly why I left, to come to the cigar industry.
So how did that happen? So
Yeah.
it was La Flor Dominicana was the one who gave you your break. That's who you went with. That's who you started with, correct?
No, actually, I worked retail for a number of years before Florida Dominicana.
Oh, okay. Where did you work retail?
I started out part time with Up and Smoke.
Okay.
For Jay and Wendy, right?
Yeah, for Jay and Wendy, and I did a couple stints with them. I started out in the holidays, and then I worked steadily part time for about a year and a half, and then my schedule changed, so I had to stop that. And then a store in Grapevine, Old Grapevine Cigar. I started working part time for them. I was hanging out there, and they asked me to help out during the holidays.
Oh, you worked for
And
Ronnie?
For Kenny.
Kenny, not Ronnie. Kenny, man.
Yeah.
God.
At Grapevine Cigar, and he actually he was getting ready to open up the new store in Arlington Cigar, and he asked me if I'd run it, and I was I don't think so, and he kept asking me, if, weekly he'd ask me, and he finally wore me down, caught me on the right day, so I made him an offer, and he accepted it, and ended up being there for 5 years.
Yeah, it's always about right time, right place. It was a real hard bargaining time when Tracy offered me a job at Michael's. I was like, I really gave him a run for his money as far as negotiating. I think it was
Yeah.
Tracy
Tough
said,
negotiator you were.
Yeah. Tracy was like, would you like to come work for me? And I was like, yes. I mean, I need to check with my family first. But
I'll give you a cigar a day. I'll take it.
Absolutely, man. It was that was a great call. Couldn't wait to go work for Michael and Tracy and stuff, man. Those were good times. So you worked retail. So I mean, of course, the legendary Jack Sandlin worked for this little company called La Flor Dominicana, and he'd been around.
He got promoted to national sales manager, and he hired me to take his place, and I ended up being there for 8 years.
So how did that conversation take place? Like, you've been working retail and everything. Like, did you have plans to become a rep? Like, where did you see it? Like, after you'd managed the store in Arlington for a while, like what kind of did you see a future in this industry? I mean, were you just enjoying your time running it day to day? Like, what was it?
Oh, I absolutely loved working retail, man. The relationships I made, and doing what I was doing, it was fantastic. But naturally, you want to progress up the ladder, and I saw being a rep as the next step up. Either that or owning a store, and God knows that DFW needs another cigar shop. So we the shop I was at, Arlington, we did extremely well with the Florida Dominicana, and Jack and I had a really good relationship. So I went over his house, had a steak, and ended up taking his place when he was my boss. And great decision.
Unbelievable. I mean, what Jack did for the cigar industry in this territory for, gosh, what was it? Better part of 4 decades, right? I mean,
oh yeah,
definitely. And he set up so many brands, and it was really great to see him kind of, and it was actually funny because I mean, like you went from La Flor Dominicana, he eventually moved on to La Polina, and that's where you made your next step. But kind of just to bring Tracy here into the conversation, Tracy, you heard Paul a second ago, like about he loved working retail. You worked retail forever. You were my general manager at Michael's Tobacco. What did you enjoy most about working day to day in retail? I mean, was it the relationships? Was it like, what was it specifically about that really captured your attention?
Absolutely, the relationships. I mean, the fascination that people from all walks of life would take interest in this small industry that you were a part of, and listen to you talk about dead leaves. The artistry, explaining somebody else's art and the passion that they put into a product, and matching the right thing for the right person to grow their love and interest for what we did. That was what it was for me. The excitement of sharing the excitement of smoking cigars. And I mean, we've always joked about the fact that you can be in a room in a cigar shop, and you might be sitting next to a sheik and a ditch digger and just holding court, having common ground, and having some of the greatest conversations with some people that you probably would have never brushed shoulders with, had they not sat down to spark up one of these tasty works of art.
Yeah. What I think the coolest thing is about working retail is you got a guy that comes in your shop, and he might have had a cigar or two, but you give him a good experience, you turn him on to a couple of good cigars, and then he comes back and he comes back and he comes back, and pretty soon he's coming in almost every day, and he becomes a friend of yours and makes friends with other people. It's just cool to see that transformation to people.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't get me wrong, there were days that we babysat, and I know Paul can agree. We babysat a lot of husbands, or
yeah,
and just had fun, taught them something that we were excited about. And it's just always, every day was a different experience, same scene, but different story. So
who is the most famous person that you met outside of the cigar industry? I mean, I remember there's some pretty cool people that walked into Michael's in my time that were outside the industry. I would wager to say like that probably some of the more interesting people were probably not well known. I mean, that was certainly the case for me. And I think the two of you might.
You mean like just at the shop, or
yeah.
Like we talking at the trade shows as well?
No, the shop. Yeah, specifically your retail locations.
Paul, I'm gonna let you go first. You probably got a better memory than I do.
Probably the most famous person I met at the shop was Barry Corbin.
I love Barry Corbin.
Oh, love Barry Corbin.
Yeah, he would come in and buy pipe tobacco from me. He did live in Fort Worth. I don't know if he still does, but
he was Arlington. He lives last I ran into him, he was living in Arlington.
Yeah, but I didn't know who he was. He looked super familiar to me, right? And then I told him, I said, "You look familiar to me," and he sticks out his hand. He's like, "Barry Corbin." I was like, "Oh my god!" As soon as he talked, you knew who he was.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah.
And then besides that, I met a few Rangers players. Steve Buechele. He was a regular. He hung out there all the time. He played third base for the Rangers. Really good guy.
And later was a coach with him in that organization too. Yeah.
Now he does media.
Yeah. We saw through a lot of Rangers players come into some Cowboys players.
Yeah. Yeah. We had a lot of them, and then a lot of sports, the Dallas Diamonds team used to come in whenever they got done playing. The ladies football team. The Rangers used to come in, several different generations. I mean, for many, many years. we had several different generations of them come in, and a lot of great folks that were sat down, and they most 99% of the people that were in there understood that these guys probably didn't want to talk sports, but then there was always the super fans that
chat them up.
Yeah, I made them work, but every one of them that came, well, not every one of them. There's only one of them that was ever really a jackwagon, but we're not going to talk about that. But a lot of great ones, a lot of absolutely wonderful people. I mean, Eddie Guardado.
Yeah, I was going to say Eddie Guardado. That was cool.
When he had his time that he was basically the mentor with the, still on the team, but the mentor for the Rangers. He was like the godfather of those guys. Like he held court with them, and he had massive respect. And when I say one of the most genuine, sweetest guys on the face of the planet, like absolutely was. Everything from Young to Blaylock to, pretty much the entire team when we were fighting for the pennant the first time, and then World Series.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of great
Derek
musical
Holland
acts that came through.
Yeah. Matt Harrison.
Saltalamacchia. Yeah, a lot of good guys. I don't know any of the players now. Like I watched the game and I was like, I don't know any of these guys.
Yeah, they're all kids, man. They're all babies.
That's just because we're getting old.
No shit.
Right.
Yeah, no. LaDainian Tomlinson came in on a Saturday afternoon. That was probably the most infamous run. It was just random. You remember Gus Tracy? My friend Gus was just up there. We were just smoking. I was like, like 4 people were in the shop. It was like that lull right before it got busy at Saturday nights, right before you. Right before you came in, and yeah, just wanders in with a bunch of friends. Just wanted a cigar, and that was really cool. Really cool experience. But yeah, Eddie Guardado was a fantastic meet for me because I remember watching him play as a kid. So that was.
I remember we had a lot of Secret Service guys that came in. During W's administration. Remember one day these guys showed up and they were in their earpieces and everything, and they came in to grab some PGs, and I was like, "Ooh, I know who these are for." And they were like, "What?" I said, "Nothing. Never mind. Have a great day."
Yeah.
Did they leave him out in the car or what?
Yeah, he sure as hell didn't come in. Yeah,
that would have been
sure, safety reasons. Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. We were across the street from a Whataburger, so there were times that there was some weird shit that happened at that Whataburger at weird hours.
Yep.
Yeah.
Times there for sure.
Yeah.
So Paul, so you make the change from La Flor Dominicana to La Polina, which you followed Jack Sandlin. Jack retires, and you go in with La Polina. This is the first time that you've ever changed brands at this point. I mean, you've moved from retail to La Flor, but I mean that was a different kind of change. But like, what was it like? I mean, for several years of your life, I mean, you lived, eat, and breathed like one particular brand, and then all of a sudden you like you got to learn a whole new portfolio, a whole new system, a whole new people, and at the time too. I mean, Jack did a good job of building that. I mean, building that brand for a couple of years, but I mean, it was, with all respect to Jack, I mean, you had to do a lot of building, for La Polina because I mean they were brand spanking new at the time.
Yeah. Well, Jack didn't work at La Polina. He went from La Flor Dominicana straight to Oliva.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. My apologies. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That was the jump. Yeah. Okay. My apologies. So yeah, I mean, but my point is that you had to build La Polina. I mean, this was when La Polina was really hot. I mean, they came onto the market really hot, but I mean, a lot of people, any new brand building that's, what we're going to talk about Tracy about in a second, building a new brand is not easy in this business, especially in Texas.
Yeah. The thing that helped the most was the relationship that I had with the all the retailers. That was the biggest thing that helped me get my foot in the door because They were serviced by a broker, but they didn't have a big footprint at all. So I had maybe 15 accounts that had La Polina in their stores. And, just because the people knew who I was and they trusted me, they took a chance, and we did pretty well with it. I was La Polina's first in-house rep.
That's right.
So it was kind of an experiment.
What was that like, for, you don't have to name names necessarily, Paul, but like for like, again, like a bunch of you guys took a leap of faith on you because of the relationships you built. Was there like what was it like for those couple of stubborn retailers that were like, again, you've known them for years, but for some reason they just didn't want to gamble on it? Like what ultimately kind of won them over? Was it just what you were doing around their competitors, or like what changed their minds essentially, or was it you just wore them down?
Yeah, I was going to say persistence, and then word on the street, because La Polina had some pretty good buzz. They had that #1 cigar of the year with the Goldie, and so that that got a lot of people's attention, and they were putting out some new good products as well. So I wore them down. Once they tried the cigars, they were willing to give it a shot.
So the easiest part was the relationship piece, but what was like the hardest part of building something from virtually scratch? I mean, again, that's what I meant by the question earlier. Like Jack had done a really good job of building a lot. You still did a lot of building with Flor and Minicana, because I mean, it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to think about now as LFD being an emerging brand, but that's kind of when you were starting with them.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, La Polina, was literally from bare bones scratch. What was that? What was that like?
It was a challenge, but I take on challenges, and once people tried the product and they got in the stores, it seemed to do well. I did a lot of events, and you had to put the cigars in people's hands, and that's a huge part of it right there, is getting the cigars in people's hands. So, but fortunately, the stuff they were making at the time was really good.
And of course, Tracy and Mike
were do work with some really good people.
Yeah. I was going to say, Mike and Tracy were one of those first people that took you on, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. They actually, they had it in the store. They were one of the stores that had it, if I remember correctly.
Yep, we had it, but we certainly increased our footprint by a lot when you came on, Paulie.
Yeah.
And on a side note to that, even though when I came on with those guys, like working as an independent, it was a while after you had already moved on, and it was a while after Jerry had gone back to retail. But the #1 thing that I would hear from people is, "You are no Paul Costo." I'm like, "You are absolutely right, but
I got better hair."
That's about all I had. Yeah, certainly not a better reputation.
I don't know about that.
No, yeah, I remember Clay. We had showed up to Stogie's one night. We were in Houston, and we showed up to Stogie's, and Clay and Bill were there. Like they had just come in. There was something going on in the area, and I don't remember. It's been a while enough that what had drawn them to the area, and Clay, quite possibly one of the funniest human beings on the face of the earth.
Oh, no doubt.
But equally terrifying, because there is no pranking Clay. You don't start that war. And Clay came up to us one night.
Or he'll just finish you.
Okay, I'm gonna tell you right now, the world might know of the Pope, but I think more people know of Clay. And I know that that's like a very broad, like that man is more interconnected with like the last thing I want to do is make him mad and end up with a fucking elephant in my house when I come home. Like, not even playing. Like, He's the only person, like, because we pulled a lot of pranks over the years, but he was one of the only people I was like, nope, go right ahead. I'll take this loss. Uh, Absolutely adore them. They were great. They were great people. But I'm gonna tell you right now, one of the hardest things I've ever had to encounter on this side of it was following in Paul's footsteps.
I
What
appreciate that, man.
what was hard about that? Like, okay, so they said you're no Paul Costa. Like, what is that? What does that translate to? Like, what was different about you or your approach that he? I mean, he obviously excelled at. I mean, he built the brand. I mean, what?
Well, I mean, obviously we are fraternal twins, and no, Paul is just very, very suave and was able to do some amazing things to it. And but definitely was a huge catalyst for, I mean, he was, I mean, and we love the guys and we love the blends, but as we were talking, one of the hardest things to do is build up a lesser known brand. And even though that brand has been around for a while, uh, it it wasn't a mainstream brand, and so it wasn't always thought of as a staple. And they started getting some good accolades, and but Paul really built it up, and he built it up not only in the retailers' minds, but he built it up in the consumers' minds, because one of the greatest things that, I think that I've learned on this side is that it's not just about the shop owners, it's about knowing the customers too. And Paul is great with building up those relationships with the customers. And so coming in and, you meet some of these guys that have been around for a while and they know Paul, and then they see you and they're like, you look like you just came off of a mountain.
Yeah. I
Okay.
think the biggest problem, Tracy, is after I
You
left,
enunciate. You enunciate.
well, it's my New York education.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was it? What's
No,
the
but
biggest problem,
I
Paul?
think the biggest problem is after I left, the brand didn't have regular representation.
Right.
And if you know as well as I do, if you don't have regular representation, your facings are gonna go away, go away, go away, and finally, you don't have you don't have a presence there, and are they willing to give you the shelf space back?
Yeah.
When someone like you comes
Rebuilding it.
back,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Rebuilding it is it's a tough thing, and it's a slow
yeah,
process, but it's not, it's not impossible. It's just, it takes a little longer. I mean, I know, just from switching over to this side of it, a lot of the things that, and I still have a strong retail mind whenever it comes to understanding the methodology from retail to, and so to independent repping, and the bridge between the manufacturer and the retailer. And I know it's a tough road,
Well, that's a really important point
to
too. I mean,
try to regain.
I mean, Paul. So, like, when you were with La Florida Dominicana, like, one of the reasons, I mean, it was convenience, yes. When I moved to Euless before I started working for Tracy and Mike, but one of the big attractors for me, as you know, was I loved that brand. I mean, I still do. But one of the big attractors for me going to Michael's was they had what I referred to as the wall of La Florida Dominicana, which is
oh yeah,
yeah, which was you. Like, I mean, you're the reason that was there, and again, and I don't mean this disparagingly at all. I mean, they went through some struggles through COVID, and then when they rebuilt the factory and everything, and they had their supply chain issues and things like that. This is, of course, after you had left. And everything. And I never thought I would see it. I mean, Tracy, I mean, you and I talked about it all the time. Like, we're like the wall of LaFleur slowly started being chipped away just because, of natural
You
kind
had
of,
to have something.
yeah,
You had to
natural
have
retail
something on
erosion.
that shelf.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
absolutely.
and I mean, for like I Lance Lewis, I'm surprised he didn't punch me in the face as many times as I joked with him and said, why don't you just come in and ask me what I'd like to put on back order today? And, every factory goes through transitional changes. And so it's,
it's tough.
understanding more of it from both sides of it, it's tough. And, I probably could have been less of a dick about it. But Lance knew I loved him, so.
Yeah, I went through the same thing, man.
Yeah,
we all run into it.
It can be tough, like even for
I
well-established brands.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I think honestly, I think that the top 25 list it's a beautiful thing, but it can also be a curse if you're not mentally prepared for the drastic growth that something's going to happen. And I'm not saying that they weren't, but it's now, I think, for me, the realization for a number one brand isn't just the fact that they're finally getting accolades for something that they worked really hard to get to. They're finally getting attention, but it's quite possibly that number one cigar may be the only attention that has drawn new smokers to that line. And so they're all trying to chase the one thing instead of all the other beautiful offerings that these guys have.
Absolutely.
And so they have to make a choice. And I mean, back in like 2008, Manuel Quesada has been making beautiful cigars for probably longer than we've been alive. And,
decades.
When Quesada got 2008, they got the number one cigar. I don't think they were expecting it. So now they handled that like true gentlemen and brought it to the market and delivered. But I guarantee you that was a little bit of a strain. Hello. So hello to everybody. This is my cat. He's an asshole. It's not mine. It's my daughter's, but
I mean, I think that's a really important point, like that you're kind of bringing up, like Alec Bradley, the name behind me, man. I mean, they had a very, very famous, and I talked with Alan Rubin about that on the show, like very famous, struggle with the Prensado. And it's funny, Paul, that you're on the show. I remember I was actually in your store, your old store. You weren't there anymore, obviously, but I was in Arlington, in this location, when I heard that they got the number one. That the Prensado got the number one. So like it was, and they struggled with it too. And I bravo Toledo and Carney and all the folks at LFD when Andalusian Bull got the number one, they may not have been prepared mentally for forecasting years later, but like they were ahead of it by saying like this was never meant to be a regular production cigar. This will always be a limited quantity. So, but like you said, Tracy, I think that's
correct.
That they couldn't have anticipated that, even with being as transparent as they were, like they couldn't have been anticipating that the smokers that would have followed them wouldn't, for whatever bizarre reason, wouldn't even try some of the incredible cigars that they had on the market, which was an interesting thing. So,
and Lido was, when you break down into the history of them, Lido was kind of revolutionary to the DR and the aspect. And I know I'll probably catch a little bit of heat for this, but I really don't care because this is my opinion. But I mean, you want to talk about taking back into history. La Flor Dominicana was one of the first truly full-bodied cigars. Like what Lido, being the Spaniard, not being tied to tradition, was doing some amazing things with Dominican tobaccos that gave people a drastically different perspective of what could come from that soil. And for a guy that doesn't smoke full bodied, was creating the strongest cigars on the market at one time. And probably still is. Like, it's hard for me to keep up with everything that's popping out, but I mean, genuinely doing things that were out of the norm because he didn't have tradition, that his father and grandfather and great grandfather and everyone down the line was doing ever since they had been taught to don't do this with the tobacco, don't put this tobacco with that tobacco. So being that he wasn't tied to tradition, he was able to offer something very unique out of the Dominican Republic. And because I remember when I first started in the game, like you could pretty much, we had this cigar encyclopedia. And it was in print for all you folks out there that are of the digital age and have never picked up an actual paper book, but it was in print and it was thick. It was a thick, like 4-inch tall book, and it was the most boring descriptions of cigars, but yet at the time was revolutionary. I mean, like things were classified by the color of the leaf, not necessarily what the leaf was. They
Yeah, I
didn't
know
go into
exactly.
specifics because at that time
Claro, yeah,
nobody gave a
Claro,
shit
Colorado,
about
yeah.
it. Was Colorado Claro, English Claro. You know, I mean, and all of these terminologies that have since waned, and it's kind of a I kind of miss the simplicity of it because now, I mean, don't get me wrong, I appreciate the fact that there are a lot of tobacco nerds out there because had had you know, Facebook not become a thing, or Twitter or whatever other social media outlet, Instagram, like had they not kind of bridged the gap, and these guys realistically had taken off on getting closer with their targeted cigar smoking demographic, or their fans. Let's just say fanboys, because there are a lot of fanboys in this industry. And not to insult them, because they have built some beautiful things up because they have really taken interest in it. And honestly, that helped us set ourselves aside when we were in retail, was because we constantly had to learn to be better, to know and ask for more information that typically wasn't released. So I'm thankful, but at the same time, I also kind of miss the good old days of just fucking smoke it. You know,
Well,
Yeah.
try
well,
this out. You know,
what was that like with when you were with LaFleur? Just to go back a couple of years, you know, when you were selling stuff, you know, the double Lajero. I mean, this was a tobacco that, you know, most of the industry threw out. Toledo Gomez came on the market, and the brand had obviously been around for a little bit. It had become established and everything. But did you run into any of that pushback at all? Like, these cigars are too strong. Like that. Like, this isn't. You know, these aren't cigars. They're unsmokable. Like, I mean, any of that, which would be considered craziness now when you think about it in retrospect. But like at the time, was it as challenging?
No, I think people were looking for that change. You know, they wanted more powerful cigars, and you know, Lido was providing that to them. So I didn't get any pushback at all.
And I have to imagine, like, when he was first started, that had to have been just crazy. I remember smoking my very first single hero. It was Jack Sandlin that gave it to me, and single hero, which I could smoke for breakfast now. But that thing,
Right? Yeah.
that cigar just knocked me back. It was freaking fantastic. I was 18 years old, freshman in college, and it was the greatest thing that had ever happened to me. I've told that story numerous times on the show. But Tracy remembers the first time I ever met Lido Gomez, and that's the story that he lives to replay every once in a while. So, but because I was an adorable child at the time.
yeah,
I
there
was
was a time that Bear was a very big fanboy,
to say the least.
and in every aspect of the word. Yeah, he was. And you know what? Uh, Now you talk with these guys in brush, they shit. Most of them know you better than they know me. And they know, you know, like it's a beautiful thing to watch you be able to go up and grow into who you are now, uh, from where you were then. And it has been super exciting to just watch it. It's funny whenever I go into the building, oh, have you met Bear? And I'm like, yes, I have. I might have met him a time or
Yeah,
two.
cross paths
Uh,
occasionally. Yeah.
you know, yeah, I was like, oh, you mean like a bearded guy? Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, and absolutely adore it whenever, you know, I hear your name come out there, and you know, somebody's like, wait, you know him? I was like, yeah, I know Bear.
It's still very surreal. I do want to get a little bit into y'all's our the way that we cross paths back, Lori's, but kind of going fast forward to this year's trade show, guys. Obviously y'all have been around trade shows for. I mean, Paul, was this. If I'm doing the math right, I mean, you're in the 20s now, right? This is over 20 PCA slash IPCPR slash RTDA shows. I mean, it's got to be over 20 at this point.
It'd be 2023 or 24. I started going in 2001.
And that was about the time for you, Tracy. I mean, because you started with, before it was Michael's Tobacco, it was Town and Country Cigars. I mean,
Yeah, I never got to go out there. We never went out to the show until Mike bought it. And then first year that Mike and Mike bought it, like we went to, I think my first one to get to go out to it was, let's see, what year is it now?
2024.
I
So
don't know.
now,
I mean,
so that was
yeah, I mean, it was the
2006,
first
right?
year that they bought it.
2006, 2007.
Yeah, 2006 is when they bought it. Yeah,
So yeah,
I
so
believe. Yeah.
you're coming up on 20 shows.
So
I mean, it's crazy. Like I still consider myself a newbie. Like my first show was 2018. I went 2018. I went to 2019. Obviously, no one went in 2020, but went in 21, 22, 23, and now 24. So it was my sixth trade show, which is just unbelievable, kind of to think about. I can't imagine what it's been like for you guys. What you know, Paul, since you've been doing this a little bit longer than the two of us, and that's not to disparage Tracy. He's been doing this for a long time too. But Paul, over that time, like what, you know, in its essence, what has changed the most? Like we could say the footprint. Obviously, COVID did a lot of things that changed the way the makeup of the show was kind of made and stuff. But like other than that, like what do you think inherently has changed the most about the trade show? From those first days, those first years that you went.
So the first one I went to was in Nashville. I think it was, like I said, I think it was 2001, and it was overwhelming. I mean, just I know in the first one you went to, you're probably like, oh my God,
Yeah,
it's just massive. But
yeah,
it seemed like every year up to a point it got bigger and bigger and bigger. Companies' booths got bigger. It was almost like a contest who could have the biggest booth. Drew Estate has a bridge and they have a second floor.
right.
And then it just
yeah.
got it was like almost out of control how big it got. But there was people supporting it, and then it seemed like it hit a wall. A couple of the big companies drop out, and people started reverting back to smaller booths. Maybe taking half of the floor footprint, not bringing out all their sales guys, because the attendance was falling. And, that was really prevalent after COVID. People were, taking a minimalist approach. And now I think it's kind of stabilized. People have found the right size booth they want. They're not spending money as crazy. There used to be parties every night, huge dinners. You don't see those anymore. There's one main party, and that's about it. It's because at the end of the day, you got to turn a profit.
So you think the middle ground is like the good spot, like the really large gregarious booths that you're talking about? Because I remember, and Paul, please don't take this the wrong way, but I remember in 2019, like Oliva had like one of those massive booths, right? And like,
Yeah,
and to put a point
White.
on
That
it,
was
like,
first year you guys did white carpet, right?
yeah, the white carpet, I remember that. And
half the carpet was white, half the carpet was brown.
Paul was vacuuming after one day, and I was like, man, I do not envy that man at all right now. There's a lot of times in my life that I've envied Paul Costa. That was not one of them.
Well, somebody paid good money for him to plug that damn vacuum in. He probably
I hope so. He freaking earned it. He earned every freaking penny that day. I gotta
he wasn't allowed to plug it in himself. Somebody had to come by and plug it in from the Teamsters, and they're like, "This is how you turn it on."
Yeah.
That'll be $10,000.
Yeah, that'll be 20 grand to turn on the vacuum. But Paul, like I remember that booth, and while it was on the larger side, and like again, to your point about like where this middle ground is, I think, there were by count, there was a healthy number of people. Like every rep was busy. You were sitting with somebody. Like I remember, like every time I was coming by, you were sitting with one of your accounts or something. And it was a year that I didn't get to Oliva because I didn't, because you guys, the one person I knew at the company at the time was like, okay, Paul's busy, so I can't really talk to him. But like it looked right. Again, this is where I'm meaning no offense to you, but it looked dead. Like it looked quiet, but I mean, it wasn't, because like you could take that same number of people that are in the Oliva booth, which looks quiet, you put them in La Flor Dominicana's booth, which has been always that kind of that I wouldn't say too small, but it's definitely not big. And then look, LFD looks bumping, right? Because it's like, holy cow, you can't even fit all those people in there. So, I mean, would you say that there's kind of the middle ground is kind of the sweet spot of where these companies, you know, if you were running things, right? I mean, I know you don't make those decisions, but if you were running things, you'd say that that's kind of the ticket. That's where it's at.
Yeah, I think not too small, not too big, you know, middle ground. Like you saw our booth this year. It appeared busy the whole time, and that's because, you know, the size of it.
Yeah.
And, you know, we had good traffic, so that always helps.
Always. Now, Tracy, you've been in large booths, you've been in small booths, and now as a broker, you're kind of manning in some of these smaller booths. I know the counts you have right now, with probably the exception of VSOL, are all smaller booths. Like, does that make life difficult for you? Because, like, I mean, you got to squeeze in there with other brokers, other reps, customers, you know, everybody. Like, what's that challenge like?
So it's different with each of them. I mean, like with Dunbarton, I mean, Steve has managed to become, well, Steve. Whereas for the years, you know, there were a lot of people while he was, you know, working with Drew Estate that he, you know, consumers didn't always know who he was. And hell, even retailers probably didn't know who he was. I mean, some of them did, the larger guys did, but you know, if they were nice enough to be able to get that once a year letter that he wrote, that was absolutely hilarious. But now he has become this like almost
Giant?
attraction. Like
Yeah.
everybody wants to talk. Yeah, like a Goliath in an industry for, you know, everyone thinks that Dunbarton is such a huge company when I think there's maybe 8 people in the office, you know, and then it's still a family run business. I mean, it's a well-oiled machine, but it's still a family-run business. And so when we're in that booth, and the booth there is, it's not small, but it's not huge. I think it's just right. However, it does get crowded because, you know, the work that Steve has done to build up, uh, and the work that everybody has done to build up that brand. But you know, Steve's social media presence has been brilliant. But really his accolades, the fact that all the top 25 lists, all the, you know, getting several cigars on each one of these lists, and then you get half of those consensus lists for the last few years. They've taken all, they've at least ranked in the, you know,
Top 3,
1, 2,
9.
and 3 of,
Yeah, top 3, 9 straight years, man. Yeah, it's insane. It's a
yeah,
insane stat.
it's ridiculous. And so when you talk about that out of what we're doing, you know, and I say we because, you know, I work with them, and they are absolutely phenomenal with it. Everybody is like, I don't think that the office gets I don't think that anybody's office gets the attention, the accolades that they should, because they're really the ones that operate the day to day. Like, and you know, like during the trade show, you know, you've got your time slot that you've got to interview, and most of the time Steve is in an interview. Like, I think this was the first year that I've been working with him that before the show started, we got a chance to really talk. Usually it's day 3 at the end of it, and he's done with all of his interviews. We get to catch up a little bit, you know, so but it's pumping out some great cigars. I mean, we just launched out the Wagashi for national release. It started hitting stores. The Holiday 22 is now the aromatic number 22. You know, the bronze back. So the last few years have been almost a blur. There were times that I would be sitting at the stairwell taking phone calls in between, you know, orders, and then running back between all my other booths. And then you get into some of the smaller guys where it's like they're getting the attention, and the amount of growth that they're getting is exponential, but each year, but you know, that a little bit more of an open floor plan, or you know, maybe not as many releases, or brands that are building, and so it's been it's fun because each one of them operates slightly differently, and it's just been a blast. It is a lot different being on this side of the fence than being a retailer. I will say that. I run a hell of a lot more. A hell of a lot more on this side of it.
Oh yeah, with representing different brands, you're all over the map. Like literally, you're all over.
Yeah, I mean, so it yeah, I've been fortunate the last couple of years that that a lot of them were a little bit closer together. But yeah, it's a lot. It's fun. But it's a lot more running, a lot of conversations on the walk. Whereas we used to do that anyways because we would, as retailers, run out of time. So just have to take the walks to and from the show and before dinners. So,
Paul, did you know who Steve Sacco was before Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust? As a retailer, you might have run into him when he was doing JR Cigars or Drew Estate, but did you know who he was?
Yeah, I knew who he was. I think he was kind of the first media guy, wasn't he? Didn't he have a website?
Yeah, he did a lot of the blogs, like in the old school days. Yeah, like what we refer to now as Reddit.
Yeah, so
he was doing threads.
I mean, he wrote and he also wrote like a lot of the cigar descriptions when he was at JR's.
Yeah, he did a lot of the
and then when I was working retail, he was with Drew Estate. So yeah, I was well aware of who he was.
You came onto Oliva post acquisition, right? So they had already been acquired by Jay Cortez, or was it just before?
Yeah, they it was about a year before I came on.
Yeah. So you didn't have any knowledge of how Oliva worked before, and we mentioned, Tracy was talking about following your shoes at La Polina and how that had its own challenges. So this is the second time. So you come on board, Jack hires you at LFD, you follow in his footsteps, and then you come again at Oliva. What was the primary reason, for, again, this was your third change again, and this is a business that has a lot of turnover, Paul. So I don't want to make it sound like you're changing on a dime. Like you built up La Plena from scratch. You helped build La Flor Dominicana. We talked about the wall of La Flor at Michael's. So you don't make decisions lightly. It's pretty clear and apparent. Like, what was like one of the biggest deciding factors? Like, hey, like you said, they were acquired a year before, and acquisitions in this business sometimes they go great. Drew Estate comes to mind, but Tracy, you and I remember when Swisher acquired Drew Estate, we had, like, I don't like to speak ill of our customers, but we had some pretty silly heads come in that day and say that Liga Privadas were tasting different all of a sudden, which was just preposterous. But, acquisitions.
Yeah, but anytime there was a brand, even before that, if they changed they changed an ink color, or if they updated think of how many times Fuente had updated their bands and brought them to a new generation of band, and people's mindsets were they'd lose their mind, or if they started putting stuff in cellophane that used to not be in cellophane, they lost their minds on any change. Oh, they're changing stuff. When realistically, yes, those blends are perpetually changing in order to make them masterfully the same, if that makes any sense. Yeah.
So what was it, Paul, that kind
of but going to what you when I was with La Polina, I was working I had a huge territory. I was covering 9 states. So I knew several of the Oliva reps, and they were happy as can be, and I talked to them about the acquisition. They're like, oh yeah, they haven't made changes just for the sake of making changes. They've left everything running as it is running, and they're just investing in the infrastructure. They're doing all the right things. Um, so I had a lot of respect for Oliva. I knew they made fantastic cigars. I think everyone knows that, but um, there was a couple things that really interested me about taking the job. One is the history of the company, uh, the the fact that everyone has Oliva, but not everyone has La Polina. So right there, it's going to be a good job. And the big thing for me, I've been doing this for a while. The territory was a lot smaller. I went from covering 9 states, like I said, to covering basically a state and a half. So I do the northern part of Texas and all of Oklahoma, and then Shreveport, which is 2 accounts. So I get to spend a lot more time with my wife, my dog, and my grandbabies. That's a good thing.
I mean, that does, yeah. I mean, that certainly makes it more attractive. Like you said, though, they're like with the everyone carries kind of thing. I think that's I think that's the challenge that like Tracy was saying that he's dealing with. Like even Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust, like is as big as Steve has blown up and what he's done with that brand and stuff. And Enrique at Matilde has that family legacy, which is a great story. I'm sure that Tracy tells quite a bit. The Sejas name still carries a lot of weight in this industry. I mean, what was different other than the obvious of like, okay, who we are. So how do you improve those relationships, Paul? Like, how does one improve on Oliva? Like, I mean, the footprint's the footprint. Like, how do you improve on something that's, for all intents and purposes, well oiled?
Well, I mean, you're always trying to, if you're not trying to put another facing in, or get them to try something else, you're not doing your job. You're just going through the motions. You're an order taker at that point. So you gotta try to get the whole portfolio, or what you think is going to sell in their store. You don't want to, at the same time, you don't want to load them up with stuff, but try this. You're doing well with these lines. Try this. I think it'll do well. That's your job to make those recommendations. So, and then we got some new lines now. We got Cuba Aliados that came out a couple years ago. So you want to try to get momentum on that. We're the distributors for Lafayette Lamb Accessories, so you want to try to get that going in the stores and everything. And I'm sure there'll be more on the horizon. The owner, Fred Vandermeer, he's in expansion mode, so I don't think we're done increasing our portfolio at this time.
I was so glad, even though I was repping this salon, whenever you guys, it came across like Pablo and great guys, fantastic people.
Yeah.
And I was so excited that you guys took them, because I knew that what would happen would be, you will take something that is and a very artisanally French way of doing things, and be able to make it simplified so that way it was easy for people to take it on.
Yeah.
And so when I got that phone call, I was like beyond excited. And he's like, "Do you know the Oliva guy?" And I was like, "Yeah, Paul's going to do great with this." So I'm excited.
I appreciate that. That could have went either way.
Tracy, that
I mean, they got some awesome products.
Yeah, I mean, that brings about an interesting question though for you, Tracy. I mean, you're in year 3, and there's already brands that have
almost year 3, yeah.
Yeah, there's brands that have fired you. There are brands that you've fired.
Uh-huh.
There's,
Uh-huh.
there's already been some turnover in your portfolio. I mean, you've been in this game long enough to know that you knew what you were getting into, with that. I mean, but I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
as excited as you were for Les on Flames there, I mean, what, like, has any of that been discouraging for you, having to say goodbye to some, like, I mean, you're friends with these people too. Like, it's not just a business relationship, but there's friendships there.
No, but I can compartmentalize business from relationship aspects, and you have to do that in this industry. Plus, I know that as an independent rep, like if at any moment, like I'll give it a for instance, like we worked with a company that were not new, but new to the market. And I say new to the market because like Zaire Union, when he bought El Septimo, he took it from a brand that was made exclusively for people that we typically wouldn't brush shoulders with, and wanted to make it something. And he came out like guns blazing, fully aggressive. And there are a lot of people in this industry that, when somebody comes out and hits the market and has the ability to market themselves in an aggressive manner and that aspect, you know, they they tend to take some offense to it because now you got this brand that is just starting out and they're putting themselves into a classification and targeting after certain clientels, and they did a good job with it. I think the best thing that Zaya ever did was hire Chip Goldine, formerly when he retired from Ashton, like he went to go work with them, and I got a call from Chip out of the blue one day, and if anybody hadn't had the pleasure to meet Chip, Chip, I know I say fuck a lot. A lot. It's like one of my favorite words because it's so versatile. But Chip is a true master of being able to say things that if anybody else said it would come across as offensive. But when Chip delivers it, he is. I mean, we've been in, like, look, without this industry and without the PCA being what it used to be and the dinners that we used to go to and the parties that used to happen, I would have never experienced some of the finest cuisines known to man from some of the most incredible chefs around the world, let alone like, upper tier cuisine. Because let's face it, man, I grew up and that was not my lifestyle. I was not from that. And I remember the first time I saw a white carrot on a plate, I was like, why is there no albino carrot and why is the portion so small? And then I took a bite and I was like, my God, this is delicious. Yeah. And I remember somebody looked at me and goes, that's a parsnip. And I was like, what the fuck is that? This is a pigment. This carrot has pigment issues, like it shouldn't be in the sunlight. And you just braised it with like a honey butter. The hell, like it was totally a culture shock for my palate. Like I'd been smoking some of the greatest cigars made, but food and cigars, they do pair very well together. But when you get introduced to a cuisine that is above what you're used to, and I remember Chip used to laugh at me, but I remember when Chip called, just out of the blue, I get a phone call, and says Chip Goldine on my cell phone. And I remember I answered the phone and he's like, Tracy. I said, hey, Chip, how's it going? He's like, you might have heard I'm no longer, I moved over to work with this company, El Septimo, and I want you to come work with me. I was like, the first words out of my mouth were, Chip, I'm not wearing a fucking suit. And of course, in typical Chip fashion, he says, Tracy, I don't give a shit if you wear a fucking Speedo. Just come work with me. I said, okay. Second thing out of my mouth was, you and I both know that because this brand is structured the way this brand is, eventually you need to build an in-house sales team. So just so you know, I'm on board and I will work with you until you find the right guy. And so we had over 2 years working with these guys and had a lot of blast with them. And I mean, I'm like, the family is Alex and her brothers and Zaya's wife all work with this company and the other companies that they own. I mean, mad respect for this man that went from was able to. I think his dad drove garbage trucks, is what he told me when they moved to Chicago, when they moved to the U.S. And or he got a scholarship at the Institute of Chicago and whatnot. And anyways, man turns like what 54. The number could be a little bit different, but 54 companies into top 100 companies within the first years of opening them. That's pretty damn impressive. And then you jump off into the cigar business, and I get that there's a lot of things that we do in this business that does not translate or relate to other businesses. But I had an absolute blast working with them. They were wonderful people, like absolutely wonderful people. But you know, I knew that going on board with it, there would be a time that Chip would finally find the team that he needed in place, because that's what he did with Ashton. That's what that's what he was known to do. And so, I knew that eventually it would. And I got a phone call from him one day, and he's like, "Tracy, just so you know, we found a full-time guy, to work in-house. And, I can't tell you who it is because, you already fucking know him and he wants to call you himself." And I got a phone call like 30 seconds after hanging up with Chip from Austin Borgstead that used to work with us at Michael's. Yeah. And I couldn't have been happier. Yeah, I mean, I never said for you guys. You didn't work for me. You worked for the company, and I hired everybody that I had absolutely hired. I hired for a specific purpose because I saw a passion in them that was matched or greater than mine, and a unique set of skills that could reach people that I couldn't reach. And so I couldn't have been prouder. And so I get this phone call, and Austin was like, "Hey, you're not mad at me, are you?" I said, "Are you fucking kidding me? I couldn't be more proud right now." I said, "Hell yeah." I said, "By the way, when we get off the phone, I'm going to call everybody that's been on the fence and pass on the torch. I'm going to call everybody that we're doing business with right now and pass on the torch, because your success means my success. We're here to build each other up." And so it was, I understand it, like not everything works out, not everything, but for me, maybe I have a slightly different mindset than a lot of people, but, I try to look for the greater good of things. And if I'm not the right fit for something, then I'll do my damnedest to build it up. But if I'm not the right fit, and somebody else is, business is business, and these brands have got to build. These brands have to do what they do, and they have to find that right fit. And there's no reason to get upset and get all pissy and tear down a brand that you worked so hard to build up. Why? I remember whenever we were working with Matt from Room 101, and he sold to STC, and now that was, when you're dealing with companies that size, there are very strict do not disclose, papers that you have signed. And so the day that it launched was the day that we find out we weren't working with. But Matt's been a good friend of mine for well, many, many years. I would almost say maybe 15 years. I don't know, but how can I get mad at a guy for doing the best move to put himself in a position and solidify something that he's worked his ass off for to build up, so that way he can spend more time with his family, so that way he can have a virtually limitless budget to create? I ain't mad at that. I'm happy for him. Mm-hmm. So I'll lose a brand. There are others out there. There are so many great brands out there that when everything lines up, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be, and so it's never any hard feelings. I know my position because I've seen it from running a store. I've seen how it plays out, and even in-house guys, get turned over, which can sometimes seemingly be without cause. So why get mad about it? Why get bogged down by that?
Yeah.
Why not
What?
keep pursuing for greatness?
So here's an interesting question that I wanted to pose to both of you, and then I wanted to take a quick break for a quick fun segment, and then we'll have a few more questions before we get into the rest of our fun segments to end the show. But you guys have been around for a long time. You guys have built established relationships. We've seen a lot of great people in this industry come. We've seen some great ones go. It doesn't have to be a brand owner necessarily or manufacturer. It could be. The question's open ended to both y'all. Who's been the saddest person that you've ever seen, like, come into the business, do well, have success, and then for whatever reason, leave and not come back, or not come back to the extent that they were?
Probably the
Dave
person
Dietrich.
that's what I was gonna say, man. You took it out of my mouth.
Dave Dietrich, and he would have been in this industry had he remained living, and like that was a huge impact because Dave was Dave 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And you could respect and know. I mean, I'll never forget that he came in one day and was and we were doing an event, and Dave chewed on that cigar because his daughter, I believe she had some sort of allergy, and so he chewed on his cigars most of the time, just for her. And when we lost Dave, man, that was a hard one for me but at the same time, it was joyous because now you're standing in a room with all of your friends talking about legacy and that somebody had instilled. So it's kind of a bittersweet, it's beautiful to know that even at the end, respect was there. But I remember when he came in one day and we're doing an event and he showed up with his Rastafarian wig with the hat on top of it. But he was approachable. Like, I learned a lot from him as a retailer. I learned a lot of lessons from him and a lot of one-on-one, like, because he wasn't shy to tell you, shut up and listen. He was
old school,
absolutely.
Yeah.
He was old school and
Longtime Perdomo rep for people who
just
don't
absolutely
know.
fucking adored him.
Yeah, longtime Perdomo rep.
Yeah.
I mean, might have even started the territory. If memory serves right. I mean, he was around for long. I remember, Tracy, when you called me. I was at work. I was at my day job when you called and told me that he had passed away. And like that was, I didn't know Dave as well as you, both of you guys, but I mean that was something. Yeah, that was just heartbreaking. Paul, I want to get to your favorite story of Dave here in a second.
Okay.
No, go ahead, Paul.
I just wish that he would have left the industry. I wish he would have left the industry in a different way. I wish he would have retired a couple of years prior because he was in his 70s.
Yeah.
I wish he would have retired and got to enjoy the fruits of his labor for, 10, 15, 20 years, rather than pass away the way he did in a hotel room because that was just, it was tough.
Absolutely. But, he did come from a generation of, you go out with your boots on, and he definitely did that. And
yeah, and
I think he had a great quality.
Oh, he did. He was a hard worker. He was a hard worker.
Yeah.
But that's the reason when I hit 65, I'm done. I won't work a day past 65.
Oh, it was Dave who made that decision.
Absolutely.
Was that so? Did he pass away? Were you at the Oliva yet at that point?
No.
Was that part of the decision?
I was with La Polina.
Was that part of the decision too? Like a little better quality of life? Were you thinking of Dave when you kind of made that change?
I don't know if I was specifically thinking with him, but I knew that would be a big part of going to Oliva was my quality of life would improve 100%. Because I mean, 9 states, you're only home one week a month if you're lucky.
Yeah.
You come home, you do your laundry, and you get ready for the next week. You're flying somewhere else. So
I mean, I saw you a lot
yeah,
more.
Flying.
I've seen you a
Lucky
lot more.
bastard.
I've seen Paul. I've seen you a lot more, even with COVID and everything. I've seen you a lot more in the last few years with Oliva than I ever did when you were with the other two brands that you represented. So that makes. I mean, that makes sense. I mean,
yeah. I was
one of the things I remember about Dave specifically about his passing, which was, I mean, this said everything about Dave and says a lot about the people he worked for. You know, Perdomo and specifically Nick is really loyal to his people. And you know, he constantly touts about how like the average employee there is like got 20 years of tenure. You know, he's kept people for a long time, and Dave was certainly one of them. But one of the things I absolutely loved is I was closing down Michael's Tobacco of Keller at the time, and Tracy came over. He's like, "Okay, we're gonna shut down the shop, but the Perdomos are coming in." This was like, I think this was the day before the funeral or whatever, or a couple days before the funeral. And I said, "Yeah, okay, yeah, I'll hang around. I'll hang around for sure." And when he said the Nick was coming in, I thought it was just Nick, you know, but it was Nick and his kids, and it was his wife, and you know, other people. I mean, I'm pretty sure the entire office showed up. I mean, we had about 30 people come into the shop that night as we had already kind of closed down, coming in for the funeral and everything. And it was, I mean, that was, I mean, that I think that said everything about Dave. You know, I mean, this says a lot about Nick and how he operates, but I mean, that said everything about the person that Dave was. You know, you know,
yeah.
we lost a few people. I mean, that was some of the saddest things too. Was like Tracy. I mean, Tracy and I lost, and I'm sure this happened to you too, Paul, when you were working retail. Where I mean, we lost customers, and I mean, and some you know were really kind of, it was kind of funny. I mean, I oh god, Sam, the guy who came in with his pickup truck and his little dog, and he would buy
Old man Sam.
yeah, Perdomo Fresco each time. Like where
Well,
he
he
wouldn't
didn't
even,
even know what it was. He had no idea what
he
it
had
is.
no
He's
idea
like,
what it was.
"Where's
He
my
just assumed,
cigars?"
where's your cigars? And at the point to where when he was getting older in age, like he wouldn't even come to the store anymore. We would just take it out to him, and he would give us, you know, he would give us his money
We would
and
try to rate. He was funny because he was still sprightly. You know, he
yeah,
even when he was getting up there, he was past 90. I remember he would 90, 92, something like that, and he would try to race us to get in the shop because he
yeah,
anytime that he got in and was able to tap me on the shoulder, so we had to let him do it every once in a while because you know when you pulled up in that red pickup truck, you know, he's hilarious because when I first met Sam, he used to send his nephew in
hmm.
and
Oh, this is a great
and
story.
you know, he's an old farmer. He used to send his nephew in to get his cigars for him, you know, and he'd wait out in the truck with his little chihuahua that he'd be feeding like prime cuts of lunch meat. And I remember at some point his nephew stopped showing up, and you know, like maybe it was his, you know, one of his daughters that was picking him up for him because he was out in the field and couldn't get by or whatnot. But when I saw him again, I was like, "Hey, where's your nephew at? Yeah, I haven't seen him come in with you in a while." And he said, "That fucker went and died on me." And I was like, and he was 40 years younger. And
Yeah,
you know, and you got this old man that we didn't know much about Sam except for, you know, we knew what he smoked, and I mean, the guy was hilarious. But there was a huge generation gap between, you know, I mean, his work ethic was, I think he ranched all the way up until his passing.
yeah, until the day he died. Yeah, it's crazy.
You know, and then we read about him in the paper and he was this war hero badass. And I was like, I could see that, man. He was
Yeah,
tough as nails. Uh, but yeah, I mean, we lost quite a few, you know, over the years. We lost quite a few great people throughout this industry overall, but it was always hard with customers because you see them on the daily or on the semi pretty regularly. And, you know, I remember Mike and I used to attend quite a few services to show our respect. And I put suits on for that. you know. But there's been some loss over the years. But bring the levity back to the conversation. I will tell you about my favorite story with Dave, if you're okay with that,
Yeah, go for it.
because it involves on our way down to PCA, and he had the misfortune of sitting 2 seats in front of me, and we're getting on the plane, and he sits down, and you know, the stewardess they were all very adamantly trying to get everything takeoff and ready, and I was, man, get out the way. Uh, and yeah, you remember this one. And I was sitting in an aisle seat, and Dave was sitting in an aisle seat right in front of me. We were at the back of the plane, and these ladies are working their ass off, just hustling, trying to get everything going. And I stopped one of the ladies and I said, "Ma'am, can I ask you a quick question?" She said, "Yes." I was like, "No rush, but would you be willing? I will give you $20 if you're willing to just stand behind that man and say, 'It's okay, sir. We're going to get you new Depends, and or we're going to get you a change of Depends, and your insures you'll be having throughout the flight, so you stay, nutrient rich and all kinds of stuff." Just messing with him so hardcore. Well, he doesn't know it, and I thought I made this lady mad. Like, she looks at me and she goes, "I am trying to get my job done," and I was like, I have fucked up. I was like, "I'm so sorry." And we're getting ready. They're getting ready to do the takeoff announcements, and everybody's seated on the planes. They've all got their luggage put away and everything. And Dave's just sitting there, just unknowingly. And she grabs that fucking intercom, and she calls out his seat. And she says, "Mr. Dave, it's okay. They're going to get they're going to get you a change of Depends, and you will have plenty of insurance. We just wanted to let you know you're going to have a good flight. It's okay. Everybody has accidents." And he's sitting there like, "Mr. Dave," and he's looking at me. He looks at his seat number and he stands up and he immediately turns around and looks at me. And like, I am dying. Like, and I'm trying to be quiet. Like, I am trying to be quiet. But these people behind me had heard the entire thing and they are hysterically laughing. And he stands up and he looks at me and he goes, "You motherfucker." But not, like, he was like, "All right, all right." And I just waited for him to get me back. And at the end of the flight, he stands up, and there was like in between us, there was like I think a 4-year-old little kid there, because most people are asses about kids being on planes. They're like, "Oh, they make a lot of noise." And he stands up and he's sitting next to his 2 kids in the seats next to him. Like, one of them is like an infant, and then there's a little baby right behind them. And they were absolutely fantastic through the flight. And he stands up and he goes, "I would like to thank you both for being wonderful through the flight. And unlike that child behind you, but she couldn't have done better with her delivery on that shit." And he was so damn mad. I mean, like, but playfully mad. Like, he was like, "Okay," because he didn't care. He did not give. But that was, I absolutely loved his response to that, because without hesitation, he says, "You two have been a pleasant talking to these children." He's like, "You are an asshole."
That's awesome. All right. Well, let's take a break for one of our fun segments here. This is our presidential trivia segment. So don't worry, gentlemen. It is multiple choice. It is a test, Tracy. So I'm sorry about that. But our United presidential trivia segment is always brought to you by United Cigars, featuring La Giana Havana, distributors of Jose Dominguez, Bandolero, Garofalo, the highly acclaimed Atabey, Byron, and now Alfonso lines from Selected Tobacco. Smoke one today and start living united. All right, gentlemen. Well, Paul, I know you're an OU fan and you hail from upstate New York, but this is the state of Texas, so we're going to be talking about one of the Texan presidents. This is Dwight Eisenhower, who hails from Denison, Texas. So Dwight Eisenhower's grandson, David, married the daughter of which president? So the grandson of Dwight D. Eisenhower David married the daughter of which president? Was it A. Nixon, B. Ford, C. Clinton, or D. Lyndon Baines Johnson? Paul, I'll give you first crack at it.
Okay, it's not Clinton. I'll say Johnson.
Johnson. Okay. Tracy, what about you?
Could you repeat the question?
Oh, come on, man.
President
I'm just kidding.
Eisenhower.
No. I'm just messing with you.
A. Nixon, B. Ford, C.
I'm just
Clinton, or
messing with
D.
you.
LBJ.
I got a math. Hold on a second here. So the daughter of, and Eisenhower was, let's see.
Eisenhower was right after Truman. So
The grandson.
Dwight D. Eisenhower's grandson.
Man, you would ask me a question. You know, I slept through most of school.
Speaking
I'm
of
never
sleep,
coming
we
back
gotta
on
work
this show
tomorrow. Hurry up.
again. Oh, just drinking and sure.
Got a guess?
John, I'm gonna say Johnson just because I have no idea what Paul said. I already forgot. What's the answer, Bear?
The answer actually is Nixon, believe it or not. So at the
Oh my
time,
God.
yeah. So at the
I
time,
mean,
yeah. So at the time, he actually when he married, it was actually this huge deal in American politics because you had two American powerhouse political families in Eisenhower and Nixon getting together, which was pretty crazy at the time. So which just crazy. Yeah. So it was the he's since done a lot of other things, but yeah, but marrying into the Nixon family and everything, this was kind of like the joining of like what they kind of thought would be like the next like American political dynasty and stuff. And like he never rose to like the point of president or anything like that, but obviously, but it was a huge deal at the time. It was a really huge deal. So that the fact that he went in, yeah, I threw Clinton in there just kind of as a throwaway and everything. So it's interesting you threw him out of the way right away, Paul. Are you an expert on Chelsea Clinton's love life, or you just knew it wasn't Clinton for some reason?
I just figured it was too recent.
Yeah. So it was and Nixon's daughter was named
that was a long
Julie.
time ago.
Yeah.
Paul.
Nixon's daughter was named Julie. And Nixon had actually served as Dwight Eisenhower's vice president too. So that's why it was like, again, it was a really big deal at the time when they got together. But I mean, Eisenhower was a really old man at that point. So I mean, he already had like adult grandchildren at that point too. And it's kind of hard to think of Nixon as a young man, but at the time when he was vice president, he was a lot younger, obviously, than he was during his presidency and stuff. So, but yeah, it was a really big deal at the time, which is kind of crazy to think about. Like
I know why you call this the fun segment.
Yeah, because it's history, man. And you know me.
Because you're a history buff. You absolutely love history.
I love this shit, man. Seriously.
Yeah, it wasn't fun because
well, and I also like throwing questions out, and it's interesting. A lot of people will still will get the questions either on guesses or just happen to know it. So it's always kind of fun to kind of just go down historical history of presidents. I had Oliver on, it was his idea to kind of do this because he always knew my kind of affinity for presidential history, and he even asked me on my show last year. He's like, "Man, how do you know all this shit? Like, where did it come from?" And I'm like, "Man, I think the U.S. presidents are still some of the most fascinating people in history. They're some of the most fucked individuals that have ever existed. But I mean, they're absolutely fascinating people, and their families and their life stories and stuff. It's crazy. I'm pretty sure in Tracy's previous life, even though like everybody is someone famous in their previous life, I've come around to this theory, Tracy, that I'm pretty sure that in your previous life you were Teddy Roosevelt, because like no one tells a story like no one told a story like Teddy Roosevelt. No one tells a story like Tracy. It's just one of those things.
Well, I'll take that as an honor. I like Teddy.
So, but that was
Well,
our
thank you. Yeah, but
presidential
I
trivia
sucked at
segment.
history apparently.
It's okay, man. That was our presidential trivia segment, which is always
Well,
brought
thank
to
you
you
for letting me
by.
learn something new. You know,
Of course, man. That's what it is all about. If we don't know things, it's we're learning stuff. You taught me that. So that was our presidential trivia segment, which is brought to you by United Cigars, featuring La Giana Havana, distributors of Jose Dominguez, Bandolero, Garofalo, the Firecracker, and the highly acclaimed Atabey Byron, and now Alfonso lines from Selected Tobacco. Smoke one today and start living united. Well, gentlemen, there was a particular reason that I brought you guys on the show together. It's really funny. Paul, you mentioned something to me when we were texting earlier this week, and it got me thinking. I had this very, very surreal and unique experience at this year's trade show. I had the opportunity to interview a very famous person who's everybody in this industry is still famous to me, but like it was someone who superseded the industry, which was Guy Fieri, the famous television chef and everything. And he had some very surreal compliments for me, and that were captured on video and posted by my good friend Will Cooper for all the world to see. And I started getting all these messages from people, outside the cigar industry, inside the cigar industry, that were like really very. It was it was very surreal just to hear him say that, and then just to have like all this stuff, and it got me thinking, about like, man, like how far I've come in this industry. And the two of you are in a lot of ways are very in large part responsible for where I am today. Paul, my favorite story with you, I won't mention this particular retailer's name, but years ago when I was looking for, like you was looking for the next step in my career in cigars, and you didn't really know me very much at the time, but you referred me to a pretty prominent retailer in the area. And that certainly didn't work out the way that I think either of us had in mind. I didn't end up getting a job. I didn't end up getting a job offer, which was fun. But I mean, you took a chance on me by, like you said, you built up a really great reputation in this area and in this industry with the relationships you built. And here was this, at the time, this dumb kid who's like, yeah, I want to run a cigar shop. And, you recommended me to someone who trusted you and everything. First of all, I want to take the opportunity to thank you for that. Because in a lot of ways that gave me a lot of confidence going forward. But I kind of want to put you on the spot a little bit. What did you see in that dumb kid back in the day that, you were willing to put your reputation on the line?
I saw a bright young man that was very, very passionate about cigars, kind of like I was without the brightness. I was passionate about cigars, but I was dumb as a rock. But no, uh you expressed the desire to get into it, and who am I to stand in your way? I'll help anyone.
I remember going
It
to a
didn't
shop.
work. Sorry, it didn't work out.
Well, I got a job offer from the man that's on the show with me a couple years after that.
Yeah,
So
you were in a much better place
out.
there.
Yeah, it ended up working out.
Yeah.
But I two things I remember about this is for the precursor to that interview was the conversation that you and we went down to the shop in Arlington, and you and I just kind of, I called you kind of out of the blue, and I said, hey man, I want to meet with you. I want to talk with you about this. And you kind of explained to me like the pluses and minuses of the industry, and like what travel, like you were saying about what travel does to you and everything. And we kind of pieced together like, what's the next step for me? Should I try to become a rep, or should I try to go this route? And we kind of landed on, staying in retail or where I was. being the right spot for me. And you're like, okay, man, I'll try to figure something out for you. And sure enough, you did. I mean, I don't know if I don't even think it was a week when I got a call from you. Said, hey, this guy's expecting your call. You know, go and meet with them. But
Yeah.
But I mean, that wasn't the only thing. It's just it's probably my favorite story about you, Paul. But I mean, you've done so much for me over the years, and you've given me tremendous support. I feel like I've always been a huge fan of yours, and I think, as no small part way, you've kind of become a fan of mine, and I wouldn't be here without you. And it's just meant a lot to me, and I just really wanted to thank you, and I appreciate you coming on the show, and appreciate all the years of friendship and support. It's been fantastic.
I appreciate the kind words, and I'm honored to be your friend, and I hope you take this thing further and take Guy's advice and do it full time.
We'll see if his words lead to something. That'd be kind of cool. I love talking to people. I love interviewing. It is something that is very fun for me, and for some reason I'm good at it. Yeah, for some reason I'm a natural or good at it, but I enjoy it thoroughly. But to that story about Paul, where I interviewed, Tracy has a part in this too. I remember the interview just going completely bad. I mean, it was just like probably the worst interview that I've ever been a part of, over like experience wise, my performance, like everything. Like, I mean, I don't think it could have gone worse. And I remember like feeling pretty sorry for myself. I called you too, Paul, and I apologized. I apologized for just how dreadful I was. And you didn't think anything of it, but I remember I feeling sorry for myself. I kind of crawled into Michael's, and I was like, Tracy, I gotta talk to you, man. Like, I just totally bombed this thing. And Tracy, you had some pretty encouraging words for me. And I know, like you said, your memory is not good, but you have a really great memory. I don't know if you remember that conversation at all or not, but it was, other than Paul's kind words after my phone call with him, I think you were the next person that lifted me up more than anything else. So do you remember that? Do you remember that?
How long ago was this?
This is before you hired me. This is before you hired me. So this is like 2011.
I mean, we had a lot of great conversations.
Yeah.
Let's see. That's been a long time. Okay, so what I remember is, no, I don't specifically remember the conversation, and it's not to that, but I do remember. I remember a brand that you called me up. I remember one day you called me up and said that you were excited because this was in between, I guess, that interview and whenever I finally brought you on, and you were working. You had landed a deal with this brand that was
Roxor, man. Roxor.
Yeah, I don't think anybody. Yeah, Roxor cigars. And I remember you called me. And you're like, "Hey, man, you're so excited," and I was like, "Yeah, no, I remember them." And you were talking about, you're like, I think I'm going to rep this. And I was like, do it, man. Learn something from it. Worst case scenario, it's a learning experience, right? I remember I took that call, and we were living in Arlington at the time, and I was on my, 2 foot by 2 foot patio stoop smoking a cigar. And you're like, what do you know about these guys? And I was like, I think Nick makes that cigar. Perdomo made that cigar. And, I remember that I ran into him at the trade show, and they had showgirls. I was like, that's all I remember about him. Like, the guy not once talked to me about the cigars, but I was really glad that you were still pursuing wanting to be in this business. And that's really, for me, what solidified the desire that you went with this brand, and was excited to even get any kind of a shot really relayed to me and this isn't a knock at that brand. I mean, it didn't work out. A lot of brands don't work out, but the fact that you believed so much that you wanted to be a part of this industry that, you were going to try something new, and you put yourself out there, and you weren't scared to try it. And like, I don't know how long it lasted or if it ever really took off. I mean, I think I only saw him at the show one time.
I made 2 sales for that
but
guy. I got into 2 stores.
as you said earlier, this market's a hard market, man.
It is, yeah, no, it is. I didn't even get into Michael's. That's not a knock at Peacock at all. Like I didn't even get in there. I didn't even get to my home shop. I probably if I had
No,
stayed
man,
with
we
you.
had a pretty grueling. We had a pretty grueling, and I would have shot you down the first few times just so you can learn the value of no and understand that it can change.
What a dick.
Yeah, I am. And everything that I did on the retail side, there's times when I walk into places and I'm like, and people are taking, because I remember the first year that I switched over to this, like all people want to talk about was how we turned that shop and made it, like built it up to what it was. And like they had zero interest in doing business. They just wanted to know how we were so damn successful. And I'm like, seriously? Like, would you like to smoke the cigar? And it didn't matter what it was. That was just how the conversation was, because I think more people were shocked that I left the retail side of it and started this up. But no more shocked than I think the first 2 people I called to get advice from. Uh, you know, uh, I spoke to Enrique, who was a longtime friend of mine, and I was like, I'm thinking about doing this. I really want to learn something on a different side of this business, and you know, uh, it was just the most gentlemanly conversation, and then I remember after I had made the decision, I'd already put my notice in with Mike. I had actually I tried to get somebody else. I got somebody else an interview with Dunbarton, and then after notice had been put in, I finally uh, reached out to Dave and reached out to Matt, and kind of filled them in on what my game plan was. And both of those guys had said, all 3 of them had said some pretty amazing things. But I remember Matt was like the first one to say, "Hey, man, just so you know, I think you'll be great at it, but don't go into it with the expectation that all retailers operate the way that you did." And that's pretty much what he said. And now Dave, on the other hand, was like, "You're going to love a lot of aspects of this, but you're really going to hate. It's going to drive you absolutely batshit crazy when you see how the majority of people run their business."
Absolutely.
And I was like, "Oh, I'll be fine. I'll be fine." And but by God, they were right. It's not a hard industry it's not a hard industry at all to make money. It's not a hard industry to grow and develop and build your clientele. Some people, some people are in it for the wrong reason. Remember for years, people would always talk to us, every day. It seemed like on the retail side, somebody was talking about wanting to open up a shop, and we would joke with them and say, "Cool, man. Just, they're like, 'Do you have any advice?' Absolutely. Just give me half the money that you intend on investing in it, and you'll get to save half that money."
Right.
But I think a lot of people have a misunderstanding about what it takes for this industry to be successful. It's not just selling a product. It's a specialized product that you need to familiarize yourself with, and not just with what you like. And so, been a lot of beautiful lessons. I know, Paulie, you've heard no more than once. Well, not lately. I mean, most people are like, "Oh, hell, Paulie." Because you have become one of the greats. I remember, Paul, when you had dark hair. I remember when I didn't have gray in my beard at all.
Yeah,
There's a reason I don't have a lot of hair.
I remember when I didn't have gray hair either. Now my beard's covered in it. So yeah.
Yeah, you used to have this beautiful black beard, and
yeah, it's all getting salty.
Yeah.
It's all salty. So This industry does a lot of things, man. Doesn't do anything for the great.
I'm just glad you quit shaving it once a year.
Yeah, it stays pretty long at this
I
point,
think that's going to happen.
Yeah, that's gonna stay probably
Yeah.
around this length.
You got a great beard.
It worked out. I found the magic length. It's right about in its sweet spot right now, so that's pretty good. You know, it kind of goes back to like I think that one of the things that kind of really kind of drove me into this industry was where you two is the example too. So it wasn't just like the age old mantra is like you attach yourself to successful people, and that's how you find success. And I identified pretty early on that the two of you were those kinds of people, and like so that's why I kind of was like I definitely, much to Tracy's chagrin over the years, I was attached to his hip pretty much all the time when we were working at the shop together. But likewise with you, Paul, like, I mean, when you were repping my favorite brand. So like, it was easy to identify that as like, hey, this is the guy I need to be in with and understand how the business works and everything. But, especially over the years too, like where you found people who obviously probably did the same thing. Was there anyone who kind of went into it? Because like I think both of you taught me that lesson pretty severely, and I took it to heart. And I imagine you probably gave those same words of wisdom over the years to several different people. Like, this is not an easy industry. Whatever you're doing, whether it's media, what I'm doing now, working in retail, repping, owning a brand, owning a retail shop, like this isn't just sitting around and smoking cigars all the time. We make it look glamorous. We make it look easy because we get to enjoy cigars. It's what we do, but it's not easy. And I think those were some words of wisdom that that were very much imprinted by both of y'all into me very early on and repeatedly, that I inherently understood. I mean, were there a lot of people over the years that, like, not that you had to turn away, but that really just didn't get it, that you saw fall flat on their face, or were you guys always pretty successful at conveying that message?
Well, I mean, people see you having a good time and smoking cigars and talking. It's like, well, I can do that, but they don't see all the behind the scenes stuff, and they don't see, working a full day and then doing a 4-hour event. So it's not that it's hard. It's the best job in the world. I love it, but there's more than meets the eye. That's basically it. And you got to have your shit together. You got to be very well organized. If you think you're just gonna go into a shop, smoke a cigar, and get an order every time, then you're sadly mistaken.
Very much true.
I remember, like,
as far as it for us, like on the retail side, I mean, that was our, the dumbification of all you do is sit around and smoke cigars all day was the perceived idea that we wanted to show, but it was also one of the most insulting things we ever heard, because it took a lot of work into making it that, because that's what we do. I mean, we aren't in the business of just selling cigars. Yes, we make money off of selling cigars, but what keeps the perpetual wheel moving is the fact that we're creating memories, the fact that we're teaching people relaxation, the fact that we're bringing them and introducing them into an artistic lifestyle that the world sometimes doesn't understand, and
right,
bringing a beautiful light to it, introducing them to a family.
Well, I think one of the things too that I think you prepared me, like, everyone, I mean, the PCA trade show has been glamorized over the years. I mean, it became even to a head to the point where they were even, contemplating and even were trying to launch a consumer day to get people that would actually go to the PCA trade show and experience it from a difference. And I remember, that was, to me, that was the pinnacle. Like, that's where I wanted to get. I wanted to go and experience the trade show. And Tracy, and similar to you, Paul, but I mean, I was spending more time with Tracy at the time. Tracy prepared me for the hard work that it really is. He's like, Bear, this like we come back with a ton of cigars, and you get to smoke all the new shit, and like that's fun. That's the fun part, but like it's exhausting. It's a marathon, and that's when I explain to like even my day job, like, hey, what are you doing with your vacation time? Oh, you're gonna have fun? Are you gonna gamble? You're gonna do this? You're gonna do that? I'm like, no, none of that. It's it's a marathon and a sprint all at one time, because you're going as fast as possible and you're going for as long as possible in these days and stuff. And I mean, you guys both did a service to me by preparing me for that very early on. Because if I'd gone into the trade show with the notion like I did very early on in this business, I would have died a slow and painful death, very literally. So, but what was it like for your first trade shows? Like, did someone prepare y'all for that? Like, for what it was going to be like? Or did you, I mean, you said overwhelming earlier, Paul. I mean, did it just smack you in the face and knock you to the ground?
Yeah, I was like I said, I was overwhelmed by the the magnitude, how big it was. I didn't know there was that many businesses involved in the cigar business, because I dealt with my 15 or so vendors, and then you go there and there's a couple hundred manufacturers, and the guy I worked for, he didn't have a plan. We just kind of just had appointments with our main guys, and then we wandered around and saw what else was out there. It was very informal, very unstructured. Um, we spent more money than we had. We didn't have a budget. So but yeah, it was very eye-opening, the sheer size of this business all in one place.
Well, let's step away for just a second, but Tracy, why don't you tell us about your first trade show and what that experience was like?
I mean, it was, you got that twinkle in your eyes. You're going into the world of, you know, the people that you adore and respect for their artistry and what they've been able to do for, one of the oldest cash crops that in this nation, and just a lot. And then you go in, and for me, it was more the making decisions of what would be brought in, what would be new, what would be considered, what would be, even whether it was brands we already had. And you go in and you're smoking. I remember the first trade shows, we would smoke, we'd light up 30 or 40 different cigars a day to try to make a decision on a half an inch on a cigar. And the next time you walk into the booth, somebody's handing you another cigar, like, hey, smoke this right now. Let's make a decision on this new blend. And, it was, again, people are like, oh, that didn't sound so bad. You were smoking a shitload of cigars. I remember I remember telling you early, whenever you first started working, it says, the world, all they think is we do is sit around and smoke cigars all day, but they don't realize that we sift through the wheat to find the best gems we think are right for them. Mm-hmm. So when you go in from a retail standpoint, it's that. And then now that you go in from a, and in those earlier years, there was a lot of flashiness. There was a lot of excitement, and it was the wow factor. And honestly, looking back on it now, all these years of going to Vegas, I've never seen a show. I've never, I've been to dinners at nice restaurants, but I've never seen a show other than one that somebody had put on where, we had a guest speaker, or we had some band that, was booked that, and sit back and enjoy. But realistically, like, it was always go, 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 and try to make all these decisions and make the best decisions from a business standpoint for your clientele's palate, and not just your palate. And, very daunting. I remember always coming back exhausted, but I was excited the first few years because, you're like Vegas. And then, it became, Vegas. Like, I know you're a big foodie, Bear, so I know that the restaurants there are, I think for me, that's still one of the most exciting parts, other than the getting together with friends from all these different, places all over the globe that tobacco comes from, or that cigar brands come from. But it's a lot of work. I know that from the moment you step off, and then in between that, whenever there were people that brought the customers in, dealing with trick or treating, it's when you're at effectively the Super Bowl of this industry, it's a lot of work to be done. And now on this side of it, man, most of the blur, it's like, all right, got to hit the ground running and keep doing what we were doing. There's no slow down and no stop, but
that's for sure.
Yeah.
I have been super impressed with, as Paul brought up earlier, like there's been that leveling out of the representation that these brands were putting in there. You had your big companies that were going in there with these astronomical, spaces, and some of them still have them, and then you would have like blasting music, or you would have, some sort of draw to that area. But effectively, I like more of where it's at now, in the aspect of that it's slightly scaled down. Most people aren't spending, $250,000 to $500,000 on a brand new, or more on a brand new booth every year. They're settling into understanding that most of the people that were getting shocked by that, and they weren't the ones that were there to do business. You get the folks that are there that genuinely, the large percentage of the guys that take this seriously and go on with a game plan. It's strategic, and those guys usually they're prepared and ready, and they don't give a shit how much money somebody spent on a booth. They don't,
Yeah.
They're there for the brands. They're there for they're there for the product. And I mean, it's one thing to put that money into the packaging. It's one thing to put that into, because we all know that packaging has to be sexy, otherwise it doesn't draw attention. If it doesn't draw your attention, then you have zero interest in trying it. And you've been in this long enough, Bear, to see a lot of beautiful cigars, and Paul, a lot of beautiful cigars, and from some people that had some incredible, talented palates. That cigar doesn't exist anymore, just simply because it didn't have the right packaging.
Yeah.
It didn't have the sex appeal to keep it on the market. And I'm liking where we're at now, as an industry on several different facets, because over the last, 20 plus years, you see how the tobacco has drastically changed. There's less puros on the market. There's more, buy, sell, trade from anybody that grows tobacco. Like, there's a lot more diversity in the blends, and they're talked about. They're excited about it. They're trying to do innovative new things, and when it comes to a product that relatively, when you think of the base concept of it, it's dead leaves rolled into a smokable form. It's not a whole lot of innovation you can have. So when you're adding these new ingredients, and you're taking, and you take these guys that have beautiful palates, and they're taking these tobaccos and they're using it as if they're cooking a beautiful meal for their friends, and we're that friends and family. I like that aspect of where we're at now more, and less of the flash and bang,
Yeah. So
I like seeing that some of these companies are putting more into the product and more into the advertising of the product than they are into the big booth. So,
yeah. So both of you guys mentioned like how the show's changed on the side, like the sideshow, for example, and stuff. And like Paul, you even mentioned how like the big dinners and stuff have kind of gone by the wayside, but y'all have experienced some pretty epic meals. So that'll tie it. That was a good segue into one of our final segments here. to conclude tonight's show. This is the Everybody Eats segment, sponsored by Postani Cigars. If you always make sure that your servant's towel is bigger than your appetite, everybody will always get theirs. Postani Cigars is more than just great cigars made by cool people. They embody an attitude of gratitude and grit. With Postania, everybody eats. So I want you to go back into your memory banks here. I did this question on the last show last week. But what is the most epic meal or dish that you have had at a trade show, and where was it? What can you tell us about it? So the most epic tasting dish that you've had at a PCA trade show dinner.
Back when I was a retailer, every year I looked forward to the Ashton dinners. They were epic. Manny, God rest his soul, he would put so much effort into the Ashton dinners that he took his top retailers to. He would put considerable thought and effort into the wine pairing for each course. So I can't say one dish that I had, but every Ashton dinner was just so well thought out, so well planned. The food was incredible. I mean, it was a 4 or 5 hour event. I don't know if you guys ever had the opportunity to go to an Ashton dinner, but they were all incredible.
Heard about
Absolutely,
them.
Many of them.
Those were my best memories dining at a trade show.
What do you recall any of the restaurants, or did they host them separately? Of course I've heard of the Ashton dinners. I mean, they're kind of infamous. Never had a chance of experiencing it, but was it at a particular restaurant or?
They were always the best restaurants. I can't remember the names of them offhand because it was several years ago.
In New Orleans, they did one of Emerald Lagasse's that was offsite, and it was like in some abandoned building that was.
Oh yeah, I was at that one also.
Yeah.
It was like a warehouse,
and it was fantastic, and it was multi courses. Then you had like I think Bizarre Meats a couple of times. They had let's see.
I had that for the first time.
Foie gras lollipops at Bizarre Meats.
Yes, I had that for the first time this year. I ate
that place
Bizarre
is
Meats for the first
fantastic.
time. It was unbelievable, unbelievable.
Those are amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a very unique, experience. Like, Chip kept that going and did Lupo a couple of years, and then let's see. Before that, you had oh gosh, they were all top restaurants.
Yep.
I can't remember all the names of them. I mean, they've been in the major restaurants. Like, I mean, the places that we got to eat at were. I remember, for me, it wasn't so much the meals; they were always fantastic. But usually, Jason and I would go, and Jason would watch the Food Network like it was adult TV, and his excitability to it. So the first time we were at like getting ready to go into Bizarre Meats, and they brought out a Umbilical ham. Like, I'm looking at this thing like, all right, that looks pretty good. But Jason would always explain to me where he had seen it, what show network, what Food Network. He knew all about all this stuff, and I remember one night we went to some other places, and he was asking about stuff that was no longer on the menu, and they prepared it up like some crack ice cream at I don't even remember the name of the place, but it was like an Asian infusion design. But I will say that one of the best meals that I think I've experienced was actually this year, and it wasn't. It was just a very intimate dinner, but it was at Sushi Samba, and I got a beautiful invite from one of our wonderful retailers in East Texas, and they, Kevin and Paul and Tim, and just that whole meal was absolutely amazing. And it was all things that had you put me down and set me in front of this menu, I'd have looked at it like so unfamiliar with what the hell it meant on this menu. That used to drive Joe nuts anytime we go to eat. I would order based off of the name of a menu, and I would rarely ever actually read what it was about because I was like, I just want food. And but yeah, man, I never know what to order at these places, and just going for me, it was more going with somebody that had a passion for that restaurant and the food that you were getting delivered, and their excitability was like what we do in the humidor. And so it would be contagious. And of course, the people you're around, always a wonderful experience. They can make or break an experience. And so, I mean, I think this year I had one of my favorite meals, and it was the atmosphere, the ambiance, the food, but also the people I was with, most importantly. And it was all things that, I mean, I'll eat any kind of food, but realistically, it was all things that I were unfamiliar with. I don't eat sushi a lot and I love sushi, but or even any variants of it. But it was an incredible culinary experience, and food was prepared in ways that I could not even fathom. So
That's pretty awesome.
that might have to be mine.
Well, that was our Everybody Eats segment, which is always brought to you by Pastania Cigars. With Pastania Cigars, they are more than just great cigars made by cool people. They embody an attitude of gratitude and grit. With Pastania, everybody eats. So, gentlemen, this next segment, we just got two more questions before we leave this evening. I do appreciate you guys bearing with the technical difficulties, and I know we got a late start, so that means a late night, an even later night for both of y'all. We're way past Paul's bedtime, as you mentioned, so I really do appreciate you guys. Tracy, you don't sleep, so I don't feel too bad about that. But our next segment is
Yeah, I don't feel bad.
brought to you by Asylum Cigars. Refuge is more than just a physical place; it can be a state of mind. Some of life's greatest reflections can be found in our own personal asylum. Moments like these were made for Asylum Cigars, so light up an asylum and choose your refuge. So, gentlemen, this segment is about that kind of that solitary moment. Again, most of your life in this industry has been around people. This is a very community-driven industry. We're constantly smoking with other folks, especially in the job that you guys have held, whether it be in retail or as representatives. You guys spend your days, nights smoking with other people. But every so often, you get that moment to just enjoy a cigar for whatever it is. Might be some special occasion, might be not. But you've probably had several over the years, so pick one. What was the last time you guys smoked a cigar by yourselves? You can remember what was the cigar and what was that moment about?
For me, it's every night after dinner out my patio by myself. I wind down my day and think about the day, what happened, what I got to do the next day. Those are my best cigars when I'm winding down my day before I go to bed.
So even after all these years, Paul, like you still light up every night.
Oh yeah,
it's still a constant for you.
every night.
Do you smoke
And
something
my
different?
wife makes it very easy for me because she's yeah, it's not always the same cigar. I'm not a creature of habit, so I don't well, in some instances I'm not a creature of habit, but
You're
look
saying
look in the humidor and grab a mine or get another one at another rep gave me or something I've been aging for a while. I got a nice pretty nice collection, so a lot to choose from. But yeah,
so
those are the best cigars when it's a nice night out and
you mentioned you're a music fan.
watch
Do
watch
you,
a little watch a little.
so you watch a little TV, listen to music.
Oh yeah,
What's your go to?
I'll listen to music outside or if Half and half, man. If there's nothing good on TV, I'll pull up some old tunes and just chill, have a bourbon or espresso, and just enjoy the evening.
You said your wife makes it easy on you. Why does she leave you alone, or does she join you, or like what's the typical there?
Well, she has a passion for the Hallmark Channel, so she's inside watching that, which I can't stand, and it makes it easy for me to come outside.
Awesome. Tracy, what about you?
Nice. Yeah, as you might have mentioned, I don't sleep much, so I do get, after everybody's asleep, whether I'm on the road or I'm, at home, either the first cigar of the day or the last cigar of the day, and the cigar, I still have that nerd excitement about getting to smoke something new, smoke something that doesn't, that like a prototype or something and still in the beginning phases. Maybe the labels haven't been, all those things excite me still, trying somebody's passion put into, like I prefer that more than going to people's houses and having dinner because that's just me. But sitting down and I know Paul can tell you when we're out there and even when we were in retail, people would always bring us something that they knew we didn't have access to. And it didn't matter what it was just a different experience because even when you have access to some of the greatest cigars in the world, you want to smoke something different. Or at least I do. And lately, there's a young man that works at a shop part time, and 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 let me lead this off by saying it's no secret that I smoke a lot of cigars.
15
I
a
smoke
day, right?
more than most human beings do. Yeah, I smoke a lot of cigars, and like I smoke all the time. Like I mean, I was smoking at the park earlier. I smoke, and I like to strategically plan my cigars. The hardest thing for me to pick out is what cigar I want to smoke. But I was gifted a little 5 count of that one of these guys, had made, and they procured the tobacco, took the time to work on these blends, and they're a little rough, not refined. I mean, but for me, getting to experience somebody that is so passionate that they want to play with tobacco on just a personal level and just hand make a few cigars for some friends and to get gifts like that. I mean, there's a couple of shops that have some guys that like to play with tobacco like that, and those experiences for me, it doesn't matter about the blend of tobacco. It doesn't matter about uh the end result as much as it does the fact that these guys appreciate you enough to gift you their hard work and ask, for your opinion. And those, without any preconceived notions, I mean, we used to play that game all the time where, you guys would go pick me out cigars because I hated picking out my own cigar only because realistically I'd rather reserve that brain power for creating somebody else's memory, especially in a room that I'd smoked everything in that room. So the excitement of getting to smoke something in somebody's combination and where their artistry was going, for me, that's That's those moments. You know, the guys that they have no desire to mass produce something. This is just their hobby. This is just something that they choose to do, and for shits and giggles. And
You know, that to break. You guys probably
I
had to break a
find it
lot of.
humbling,
Mhm.
very humbling, you know, to be able to that somebody offers up a gift like that. And I thoroughly look forward to it because they genuinely want you to go back to the roots of just studying it.
You had to break a lot of hearts over the years. I imagine both y'all. I know I spent enough time in retail to where reps would come in all the time, new companies would come in all the time, hand you a cigar that they, like you said, it was really exciting for them, and of course, it was really still exciting for us to be handed something that someone was so passionate about. But that, for me, my opinion never carried a lot of weight with you, Tracy, and with Mike. And Perry Tong when I worked for him at Pop Safari, but to manufacture, I think it probably didn't carry as much weight as y'all's and everything. But you know, over the years, was there anything worse? Like you, especially knowing both of y'all knowing what goes into this, the hard work that someone has to put in, the obvious passion that a lot of these people came in with, and to hand you a cigar that just didn't hit your palate. I mean, was there anything more heartbreaking than having to tell them that?
Yeah,
Oh,
I mean, you try to be tactful about the way you do it. You know, uh, I tried not to make any decisions right then when I'm sitting with them. Say, let me give it some thought. Let me, they'll usually give you a couple cigars. Say, okay, I'll smoke another one. And but at the end of the day, it's a business. You got to make the right decision for the business. If you think it's not going to sell, then you got to make that decision.
yeah. I mean, if you don't believe in it, you're not going to sell it.
Yeah,
And
yeah, that's
and
absolutely.
and if you can't actively think of the people that this cigar is meant for those guys that actually put the thought into what their customers smoke, if you can't think of who that this cigar is made for, then it shouldn't be on your shelves occupying
Yeah,
space. And is it hard? No. I'm a firm believer that sometimes the best thing you could ever do for somebody is make them challenge themselves to do better. Uh, do I want to be a dick about it? No. You do have to be tactful, but I think that the best response is always to be absolutely honest. And
Yeah, be truthful.
it might hurt a little bit, but I think over time people will always respect you more for being truthful, uh, not opinionated, but truthful about the aspects that go into making a sellable product. And coddling someone's opinions can oftentimes, or their feelings about something that they've worked on, can oftentimes keep them from creating something even better. You know, uh,
for sure.
whether it be like when we were booking music or I don't know. There's some people that hearing those words and not just kissing their ass and saying, "Oh, you did a good job," be like, "Hey, man, let me tell you, you want me to be honest about this? I'm going to be honest about it. I'm not trying to hurt your feelings, but I want to see I'm excited to see what you do next, to see if you take this information and go with it." But, uh, there have absolutely been times where I was glad that I told somebody exactly how I felt about something
Yeah,
because it gave them a choice. It gave them a choice to either put more heart into it or to do the research or to give a shit more about construction or whatever versus thinking that what they had created would be sellable
yeah.
and giving them a false sense of hope that would only die off very quickly. So I always hope that people would be honest with me like that, so if I were to present them something, and it be something that they genuinely couldn't see value in trying to sell. You know, as a retailer, your humidor does not grow. It's not like a magic room that, oh, hey, you need to make room. It's going to grow. No, it's a finite amount of space, and that real estate should be occupied by things that do produce. Does that mean everything produces without effort? Hell no. Like, this is one of the biggest hand sell industries that there is, because you're genuinely trying to find the right fit for somebody and what they want. So I don't know. I mean, it's a double-edged sword. Have there been people that take it and quit? Yeah. Have there been people that take it and try to do something different? Absolutely. But
Yeah, before we go into our last, I mean, I think one of my favorite stories is, like, again, like you said, that this was, Tracy, I think this is something you've never lost a love for, is like, even telling somebody no, you genuinely wanted people to succeed every way. And Paul, I imagine you're probably the same way. You guys are cut from the same cloth like that. But I mean, I remember there was a time that like, I started becoming just a tad jaded on the rep that would come in, or the new company that cigar would come in and be like, hey, here, smoke my new cigar and stuff. And obviously it's unfortunately changed quite a bit since that day, and it's no longer what it used to be in that regard. But I remember, Tracy, like it was yesterday, like we were still working together, and you're like, hey, these two guys are in the back, Jean-Michel Louis and Phil Zengi, and they have, like, if you had Debonair, and I was like, Debonair, the rum, is that a flavored cigar? Like, I was like, you're like, man, you got to smoke this. And I remember honestly, genuinely being a little upset with you, because I was just so jaded at that point, because it's just, at that time, the last, good solid dozen new cigar companies that come in and handed us stuff were just didn't hit my palate, were not good.
shit.
And yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
just weren't good. And you're like, and I mean, it was, if there's anything that I could ever do, Tracy, to trust you with, it's a good tasting cigar, because like you said, you're brutally honest about everything. But I remember smoking up my first Debonair Maduro and absolutely just being blown away, from a first impression standpoint. Just unbelievable blend that Phil had put together. And we ended up selling a lot of Debonair over the years, and that, unfortunately, that brand's, I mean, it's still around, but it looks obviously considerably different, and there's a lot of things that have changed about it. But man, I mean, when you have the superior product, and when you get people that were like us and like you and Paul, when you get people who are genuinely good at what good in this industry and good for it, you get behind something that moves them, and there's no limit to what you can do with that. So, this is our last question of the night, gentlemen, and it seems probably it's probably not as big of a curveball as it needs to be, but this is always our last segment of the night, is always our curveball segment, which is sponsored by Dunbar Tobacco and Trust. Fastballs or curveballs, it doesn't matter. Since the company's inception, Steve Saka has been knocking it out of the park. As we said earlier, 9 consecutive years in the consensus top 3. Congratulations to our good friend, Mr. Steve Saka. So, guys, here it is. You guys have done
I get to rep that.
over 2 decades in the business for both of y'all. Over 40 years combined. It's a lifetime. It's a career. You guys have made it such. If you guys could go back in time, Paul, if you go back to that kid that got out of the U.S. Air Force, Tracy, I know you were smoking cigars at 12, but but if you guys could go back to the beginning,
Hey, let's not talk about that on the air. Come on.
Do anything else. You guys could do anything else. If you guys could do anything else, what would it have been? It wasn't the cigar industry. What would it have been?
I was a drummer. I was a musician, so I would have liked to have been a professional drummer, or open my own Italian themed restaurant.
Interesting.
I
Okay.
love to cook. But I have no regrets at all. None. The path I've taken. I love this industry. I've loved what it's given me, both in relationships and uh, my lifestyle. Wouldn't change a thing, man.
Italian restaurant. Obviously, that's your
Yeah.
lineage. I mean,
Make me hungry.
did you
More of
grow up
a not.
cooking too, or
What's
was
that?
did you grow up cooking too, or was that something that came out
Y-
later?
Yeah, I did. I went to 2 years of culinary school as
No shit.
in my last 2 years of high school. Yeah.
Oh wow, I had no idea. You learned
But what
something.
not like I wouldn't want to
Paul,
open like a.
I'm coming over because even though it's 12:30, I mean, you just made me hungry, and I'd like to see what you can do in that kitchen. So your wife will
Oh, I
put on the
got some.
Hallmark Channel, and you just rock that kitchen, bro.
All right, man.
2 years of culinary school. What? So like, were you like? Was it? Is that why you joined the military? Was it to save money to build a restaurant, or was that like what
No, no. Uh, the reason I joined the military, was kind of
family thing, right?
that's what you did in my family.
Yeah.
That's what you did. My father was Army. My grandfather was World War II Army. Both of my brothers in Navy, and that was just the path I chose, going in the Air Force. I had no desire to go to college at the time, so uh, just decided to serve.
It's awesome. Tracy, what about you?
Probably to listen to one or two of these assholes that was trying to tell me about Bitcoin before it fucking exploded. Other than that, no. I mean, I'll never forget the first time James Ross brought it up to me, and he's like, "Hey, there's this new digital currency that's about to be hitting the market, and blah blah blah." And he's like, I think it was like $100 per Bitcoin. I was like, "That's the stupidest shit I have ever heard of." Like digital, it's not even real money. Which realistically, our money is not even real money. It's all a piece of paper. If a $100 bill burns, it holds no value after it's been burned. So I was like, man, I don't know. I just don't see this going anywhere. That's also why I'm in the cigar business because I'm not smart enough to make those decisions like that and buy Bitcoin at $100 a piece at the time. Uh, yeah, no, I mean, I'd be hard pressed. I always loved ranching. Like when I started in the business, I was, building cabinets and doing ranch work and, running 5 wire barbed wire fences and just a good old boy. And I love smoking cigars and I got ADHD, which I was undiagnosed at the time. Like you get off into something that you really enjoy, you just kind of take off into it. And yeah, I might have turned a misspent youth into a career path. I wouldn't suggest that for too many people, but yeah, I'd smoked cigars for a long time, and you know, I don't know. There's just something about this. It's always been a draw that's been more than just the tobacco. It's so it's hard for me. I've done several other things. Like cleaned up train wrecks and all kinds of other stuff, but it always tried to make life as exciting as I possibly could for a poor kid from the wrong side of the tracks that remembers what spam tastes like before the now you can get it at places and it's a delicacy. It's yeah, that shit threw me for a loop. I'm like, it's canned meat, man. We were eating this because we were poor. You're eating it because you think it's bougie now. Um, serve it on rice with seaweed. It's it just there was more to the culture, that I truly appreciated. Uh, for me, it was the closest to collecting art I would ever get. And just loved the industry as a whole. I mean, it's where else can you go and brush shoulders with people from all over the world of all different walks of life, and they're sitting there envious to what you do for a living. And it's being in this industry truly has taught me that had I chosen any other path, I probably would have made a hell of a lot more money. But it's not, money doesn't equate to the experiences. And I've had more conversations with people and learned more than I could have ever learned if I stayed in college. I'm not saying that you shouldn't go or any of that kind of stuff, but I think that that life's value is truly added in the lessons that you can learn, and they don't always come from a textbook. And realistically, at this point, though, I can definitely say that I'm not suited for too many other industries because, well, I mean, if you know me, you know me. I'm pretty well ingrained in this, and there's not too much about me that would be culturally or socially acceptable in like a white collar position anywhere. But I'm with Paul. I'd be hard pressed to think that I'd want to do anything else. I mean, there are other things that I thoroughly enjoy doing, but for me, this is still one of those passion projects that turned into a career. And absolutely love and adore it. Every day it's a different experience. I get to meet people from all walks of life with different stories. And I experience more life than had I chose too many other things. I mean, I could have retired from something else, any other career path, like I had a lot of college credits in law enforcement and was did a lot of school for that in high school and whatnot, and I was super interested in that. But genuinely speaking, I can't think that I would have ever enjoyed life's experiences to the fullest as I have within this industry. It took some young kid and let him grow with it. So it's still a humbling experience whenever I like you hear the impact. Like every time you tell me, Bear, something that impacted you, I'm like, man, thanks. But like, I mean, I genuinely don't know what to say, not because I'm not flattered by it, just because I'm surprised at what dead leaves have been able to do to create the relationships that I've got in life with people, including yourself and Paul, so it's a beautiful experience. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, we don't, we sell a product that can virtually be purchased. We sell products to stores and it can virtually be purchased anywhere, but realistically, it's all about those experiences that people have that make them want to buy that product from you. And so it's not as much about that product and about what goes into that product. It's more about, the expansion of memory building with people, so it's, I can't think of anything else I'd rather do.
Yeah.
I already feel like we're already psychologists, sociologists and all that other shit. So might as well just enjoy it while we're doing it, right?
We had the only,
There you go.
working in retail, working in cigars, we have the better job than being the therapist and a bartender, man. We get to smoke along with people and share their life celebrations,
Yeah.
their hardest moments, their happiest
Oh,
moments.
absolutely.
it's an industry worth being a part of, man. And
We truly have been a part of that.
yeah. And again, I mean, it just goes, I just can't thank you gentlemen enough for tonight, but for, you know, the last decade plus. I've been in this business in one way, shape, or form for 14 years, which is crazy. The moment you offered me a job, Tracy, changed in a lot of ways, changed my life. You and Mike taking me under your wing and allowing me to flourish at Michael's, was a huge catalyst to this. And Paul, you thinking the world of me from barely knowing me, just, and giving me a couple of opportunities and always giving me great guidance and support and advice and words of wisdom, all over lighting a cigar, I mean, you guys have been the most pivotal people in my life, in one way, shape, or form. And it's meant the world to me, to grow and to see, two of my oldest friends, still doing what they do and what they love, every year at the trade show or just hanging out at an event or whatever. So, it's been a privilege. It's been an honor. And so I just wanted to thank you for that. And I wanted to thank you for tonight. And I wanted to thank our audience as well. So thanks for staying up late with us as always. But that will conclude our show for the night. So, as we always say, as always, we do appreciate everyone's likes, shares, and comments. Keep them coming. Don't forget that tonight's audio broadcast is courtesy of Grand Habano Cigars. Honest, compassionate, great cigars. Be sure to download, subscribe, and review today. You can always check us out wherever you listen to podcasts, whether that be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Podbean, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And remember, our audio broadcast is brought to you by Grand Habano Cigars. Facebook Live is where we broadcast every Sunday night at 9:30. We've got some great guests coming up in the next couple of weeks. We're going to be talking about some fantastic cigars and smoking some good ones and having great conversations like we've had tonight with these two gentlemen. And you can always check out our YouTube channel as well. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. So without further ado, that concludes our 288th take. We're on the road to 300. Can't believe I've done 288 of these. It's pretty fantastic when you think about it. And I've had some great conversations along the way. And a lot of them are all, and actually all of them are in one way, shape, or form are responsible because of these two gentlemen that I'm sitting across from tonight. So thank you so much, guys, for all your years of friendship and guidance. And we'll do it all over again in a heartbeat. So thank you very much.
Congratulations, brother. Thank you.
So without further ado, guys, that is the 288th take of ELOsoFumarTakes. As always, we do appreciate everyone's likes, shares, and comments. Keep them coming. From the Alec Bradley Lone Star Studio of Azle, Texas, as always, he's Paul Costo. He's Tracy Spence. And guess what? I'm Bear Duplessis. We'll see you next time, everybody.
Adios.
Good night.